Chapter 34:20. But Min Min had always been doted on by her mother. The anger in Jing Qiao's heart had already reached its peak. She could not help but shake off Wang Liming's hand and raise her voice. Mother, why do you only have Min Min in your heart? I'm your daughter too. Aren't you worried that I'll be swept up into the sky by the earth tornado? Wang Liming was furious. She raised her hand and slapped Jing Qiao's face. Evil daughter. The one being swept up into the sky by the earth tornado is Min Min. The one suffering is Min Min, not you. Why are you shouting at your mother? You want Min Min to die so badly, don't you? Wang Liming glared angrily at her eldest daughter. She did not hide the disappointment and hatred in her eyes. Jing Qiao suddenly couldn't stand still. She did not expect her mother to hate her so much. They were both her biological daughters. Why was there such a difference? How could Wang Liming care about Jing Qiao's feelings? She pushed her away with a look of disdain and said coldly, "Get out of my way, Master." She turned around, wanting to break Jing Zhao's defense barrier. But when she turned around, she met Jing Zhao's merciless eyes. That's right, old master had already given up on Min Min. At this moment, why would he risk his life for Min Min's sake? She was the only one who could save Min Min. She was the only one who could save her daughter. Wang Liming chased after the earth tornado with flying steps, screaming for her daughter at the top of her lungs. Xiao Mu couldn't resist taking a few more glances at her affectionate motherly face. The feelings of every mother in the world were probably the same. If the one swept up by the earth tornado at this moment was him, his mother Wei Ziqin would probably also be so anxious that she wanted to cry but had no tears. Arbor was stunned. She tilted her head and thought for a while. The earth tornado had already swept Jing Minyao far away. The venerable peach blossom immortal, and the rest removed the defense barrier around them. The little fellow tilted her head and stared blankly into the distance without saying a word. Yichen frowned and couldn't help but flick her head. What are you thinking about, Jojo? What's there to think about this kind of woman who's too kind and spoils her son? Spoiling a child is like killing a child. This kind of woman is not desirable. Ma Shichen snorted and said, "That's right. If it wasn't for Wang Liming spoiling her daughter so much, causing Jing Minyao to be domineering and arrogant, thinking that she was invincible and unparalleled in the world, the situation wouldn't be like this today." Emo Lien understood this little fellow, who was letting her imagination run wild, too well. He knew what she was thinking right now, so he whispered into her ear. "Mother is not a woman like Wang Liming. Mother has taught you and Shaolin are so well. She's knowledgeable, gentle and kind. She's different from them." Everyone was speechless. "Your Highness, don't you feel guilty saying this?" After Emolian finished speaking, she realized that there was only silence around her. She turned her head to look at Hu Jiechen and the others, who had a faint smile on their faces, and glared at them. "What are you doing? Did she say something wrong? Was Jojo not good?" Jojo was so good. None of them were allowed to laugh at Jojo. "Cough, let's go and take a look." Hu Jiechen coughed to hide the smile at the corner of his mouth. After saying that, he stepped forward and chased in the direction of the earth tornado. Arbor asked in confusion, "She's already been dealt with by the heavens. Why are you still chasing after her?" Chapter 34:22. That's right, it must be Jojo's relative. Otherwise, why would it always avoid Sir Jojo so harmoniously whenever there was a crisis? It must be because Sir Jojo was Heavenly Dao's relative, and he was a close relative. Arbor looked at the people in front of him in a daze, thinking that their thinking was a little weird. Who could be relatives with the illusory Heavenly Dao? How ridiculous! While everyone was talking, Wang Liming had already been spat out by the earth tornado and landed on the ground with a bang. That earth tornado seemed to despise Wang Liming very much, and liked to toss around Jing Minyao alone. Wang Liming looked up at her daughter, who was floating up and down in the earth tornado, and screaming miserably from time to time. Her eyes were red from the pain, and she couldn't stop screaming. "Damn heavens, come at me if you have anything. Let go of my Minmin, Minmin." Bam! Jing Minyao was thrown down from the sky like a lump of rotten meat by the earth tornado, and landed heavily on the ground. Wang Liming crawled over with tears in her eyes, and carefully reached out to hold her daughter's head. She reached out to check her daughter's breathing, and couldn't help but wail miserably. Minmin, my Minmin! Minmin! She wasn't breathing? Arbor blinked and then seemed to think of something and said softly. Could it be that because Jing Minyao came back from the dead and went against the heavens, Heavenly Tao finally thought of taking care of her? So it did this? Maybe it was because Heavenly Tao didn't have time before. Sir Jojo said with a straight face. Jojo, what you said makes so much sense. Qi Xianxian and the rest looked at her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Seeing her serious expression, and that she deliberately lowered her voice to speak to them mysteriously, they couldn't help but have the urge to burst out laughing. Yes, Heavenly Tao's memory isn't very good. The corner of Yuan Shichen's mouth twitched as she said. Previously, it forgot to take care of Jing Minyao. Now taking advantage of this earth tornado, it suddenly remembered to take care of her. Arbor. Originally, he didn't think that he was exaggerating, but after Yuan Shichen described it so vividly, why did it feel like he was a little brainless idiot? Bah! Arbor retracted his gaze. His face was tense as he suddenly pointed forward. What's that in her hand? Wang Liming laid on her daughter's body and cried for a while. Then, she took out a small bell the size of a thumb from her ring. After the small bell appeared in her palm, it immediately jumped into the air. Following a series of crisp bell chimes, the bell grew larger with each chime. It wasn't until it became several zhang large that its shadow was able to completely cover Jing Minyao, who was lying on the ground. Only then did it let out a crisp sound and stopped moving in midair. Arbor suddenly jumped up, like a little leopard that had been released from its cage. With a whoosh, it jumped to Wang Liming's side. He Chun and Mo Lian, and the others couldn't help but cover their eyes. They saw the little guy kick Jing Minyao, who was lying on the ground, with a speed comparable to light, and sent her flying several feet away. Arbor waved his hand, and an ice coffin landed on the ground with a thud, kicking up a small cloud of dust. This ice coffin was immediately enveloped by the light of the Soul Congregation bell. Arbor's eyes lit up. He raised his hand and caressed senior sister Su Shanshan's sleeping face through the layer of ice. At the same time, Jing Minyao's corpse was sent flying, landing on the sand with a loud thud. This was like a fierce hammer that landed on Wang Liming's heart. Chapter 34-23. As if someone had flipped a switch, Wang Liming jumped up and screamed as she charged towards Arbor. Arbor, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Wang Liming screamed as she charged towards Arbor. However, Xiaomu didn't have time to waste words with her at this time. She directly kicked Wang Liming, who was pouncing at her, into the distance. With a wave of her hands, Xiaomu bent down to pick up eldest senior sister from the coffin and laid her flat on the sandy ground. Jojo put away the ice coffin and quickly left the range of the soul convening bell. Just as she retreated, the Soul Congregation bell once again shot out a dazzling tricolored light that completely enveloped Su Shanshan. Arbor's eyes were filled with excitement. Her small face was brimming with rare joy. She looked up at Mo Lian and tugged at his sleeve, unable to conceal her excitement as she exclaimed. Quickly look, Lian, eldest senior sister has been enveloped by the Soul Congregation bell's light. That's right. The light from the Soul Gathering bell had completely enveloped Su Shanshan at this moment, illuminating her fair and delicate little face. It was as if she had been painted with a layer of faint aurora, instantly giving her a trace of spirituality and life. Don't worry, Jojo. The soul convening bell still needs some time to take effect, Ma Shichen said with a smile. Arbor knew that she couldn't be too hasty. She nodded and looked at the copper bowl-sized soul gathering bell in front of her with bright eyes. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. Yet Mo Lian couldn't resist creasing his brows, and he reflexively grasped her small hand tightly. Looking at Xiao Qiao's expression, which was full of expectation, if she found out that the soul gathering bell was actually useless, would Xiao Qiao be so disappointed that she would fall silent? Mo Lian squeezed her small hand and couldn't resist saying, Xiao Qiao, you promised me before. Xiaomu was startled. Afterwards, she looked up at Mo Lian and discerned something from his extremely serious phoenix eyes. She nodded obediently and patted his chest comfortingly. Don't worry, I know. It's good that grand senior sister wakes up. But if she doesn't, I'll find another way. How could she be the same as before, hiding in Paradise Planet for a few years as soon as she fell silent? Her current state of mind was far stronger than before. Moreover, Lotus was by her side. No matter what she encountered now, she would be able to handle it. Mo Lien looked at his wifey's expression and confirmed that she wasn't fooling him. He then let out a light sigh of relief and nodded with a smile. I'm relieved that you can think this way. As long as his JoJo didn't go down a dead end, everything else could be solved later. The few of them exchanged a few words before Wang Liming ran over like a madwoman and slammed her head into the transparent barrier. Yes, it was the barrier. Now, the Soul Congregation bell had completely enveloped Grand Senior Sister, forming a complete transparent barrier. Grand Senior Sister was lying peacefully inside the tricolored barrier. Xiaomu gazed intently at the Soul Congregation bell. Only she could hear her thumping heart. It seemed that she had waited for too long. So long that she almost thought that Grand Senior Sister would never return to her side. Now had the day finally arrived. Chapter 34-24. Su Shanshan was surrounded by the tricolored light, as if she was bathed in the tricolored holy light, serene and tranquil. Wang Liming was in a sorry state, but she struggled to crawl up from the ground. She scrambled over and hugged her daughter, Jing Minyao, before turning to glare at Xiao Mu with resentment and venomous eyes. She lowered her head and repeatedly called out, Min 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 Min. Jing Minyao's eyes were closed, motionless. Wang Liming reached out and touched Jing Minyao's nose, only to feel a bone-chilling cold. She couldn't help but shiver as she screamed out, Min Min! She hurriedly hugged her daughter and rushed towards the tricolored barrier covered by the soul-gathering bell. Her head hit the transparent barrier, and with two bangs, she slammed into the barrier. However, the soul-gathering bell had already come into effect. The people outside naturally couldn't get in. What's more, it was a sacred tool. If it was so easy to break through the barrier, it would be ridiculous. Min Min, it's not like this. Wang Liming tried her best to hit the barrier and exclaimed, It's not like this. Mother. Jing Qiyao rushed over and grabbed her mother's arm. Mother, don't be like this, okay? Min Min can't be saved, mother. Who said you can't be saved? Wang Liming shook off Jing Qiyao's hand and glared at her, as if looking at an enemy. You can't wait for your sister to die, can you? How could I give birth to such a heartless thing like you? If I knew you would become like this, I wouldn't have kept you when you made me suffer so much pain that I almost died from dystocia. Jing Qiyao's eyes widened in shock as she looked at her mother, who said this in front of her. So it's not that I'm not good enough, and it's not that I'm disobedient. It's because when I was born, I almost caused mother's death. So mother has always looked down on me. Jing Qiyao sternly questioned. Her pair of eyes became incomparably red. Yes. Wang Liming hugged Jing Minyao in her arms and stiffly replied with a single word. Jing Qiyao laughed like a madman. She finally had an answer to the question that had troubled her for so many years. However, it was better for her to have an answer like this forever. Good, good, good. Jing Qiao nodded repeatedly, her eyes coldly staring at Wang Liming and Jing Minyao. Don't you love your youngest daughter the most? Don't you only have Min Min all day long? Jing Qiao suddenly pounced over and grabbed Jing Minyao's legs, forcefully pulling her to her side. What are you doing? What are you doing, Jing Qiao? Are you crazy? Wang Liming screamed and rushed forward to save her daughter. You're the crazy one. Look at your daughter, whom you dote on so much, and what kind of idiotic character she has become. Look at the sins you've committed. Shut up. Wang Liming screamed and interrupted Jing Qiao's words. She glared at Jing Qiao coldly and snapped. I told you to shut up, shut up, shut up. Jing Qiao snatched Jing Minyao's body and choked Jing Minyao's neck, forcing her to raise that lifeless face. She laughed crazily. Do you see? Do you see, my good mother? Your most obedient daughter is now thoroughly dead. She can't be saved. Shut up. Wang Liming's eyes were bloodshot. Chapter 34-25. She tried to pounce on her several times, but was kicked away by Jing Qiao in her crazed state. Wang Liming fell to her knees with a plop, slapping the sand as she wailed. How did I give birth to a beast like you? Beast, beast. You won't even let off your own sister. What sin have I, Wang Liming, committed? Ah, her husband was unreliable. Her most beloved daughter couldn't be saved, and her second daughter, who was usually like an invisible person, was actually going against her like a madwoman at this time. She hated these people in front of her. She hated every single one of them. Wang Liming took out a spirit breakthrough pill from her ring and swallowed it. Her aura began to rise steadily. Jing Qiao's heart jumped. She grabbed Jing Minyao's neck and retreated a few steps. She stared vigilantly at her mother, and her voice became sharper as she shouted, "Mother, do you still not understand? Minmin can't be saved. Minmin has already used the soul congregation bell once. She can't use it a second time. Ah, I'll kill you, you beast." Wang Liming's eyes were red as she pounced on Jing Minyao, slapping her fair cheek. Arbor looked at this scene in astonishment. She opened her mouth slightly, as if wanting to say something, but she didn't say anything and just tightly pursed her lips. Emo Lien looked down at her and reached out to pull her into her arms. She patted her lightly and said in a low voice, "See, I already said that this woman isn't our mother. Look at her selfish appearance. If it wasn't for her, how could the two daughters have ended up in such a situation where they were trying to kill each other?" Arbor slowly nodded. Her mother, Wei Ziqin, clearly knew that she wasn't her biological daughter, but she treated her as if she was her own for many years. Just like the third madam, Hua Shi, who didn't give birth to her two concubine sons, but still treated them like her own. Whenever they encountered trouble, she would protect them like a mother hen. Humans have feelings. Even though they are not your biological children, they are still better than your biological children. If you treat your children well, it is impossible for you not to reciprocate at all. Although the madam of the third branch was a little ignorant, and it wasn't a good thing to spoil her son like this, Arbor could vaguely see a bit of his mother's shadow in this madam. Furthermore, Madame Hua was not like Wang Liming, who spoiled her child excessively, so on the day of the birthday banquet, she had spoken out to help Madame Hua. This was the reason. They're both your daughters, but your heart is so biased. Arbor shook his head speechlessly. This Wang Liming could be considered a weirdo. She had been holding a grudge against her for so many years, just because she couldn't give birth to the child on the day she gave birth. Watching the mother and daughter exchange a few moves back and forth, everyone felt a little speechless. Jing Minyao's body was now thrown to the ground by them. After taking the medicine, Wang Liming's power had greatly improved. Naturally, Jing Qiyao could not deal with her. Not long after, she was pressed under Wang Liming's body and slapped on the back of her head again and again. Jing Qiyao was thrown to the ground, her head and face covered in blood. She couldn't help but scream. Gradually her voice grew weaker. Wang Liming was really ruthless. Slap after slap. Her eyes were red as if she had gone mad. She slapped the back of her daughter's head again and again. Chapter 34-26. Only when Jing Qiao's screams could no longer be heard did Wang Liming come back to her senses. "Ah!" she screamed and looked at her blood-stained hands. Her hands trembled slightly. After shaking for a long time, she finally flipped Jing Qiao over. All of a sudden, she met Jing Qiao's angry eyes. "Ah!" she screamed and jumped up. She took a few steps back and sat on the ground. Arbor looked at this mother coldly. From the beginning to the end, they just stood by and watched. She didn't even care about her own daughter. Why should others care about her? What a joke. Wang Liming was obviously crazy. She kicked away Jing Qiao's body and staggered to get up. Holding Jing Minyao's cold body, she rushed toward the Soul Gathering Bell's tricolored barrier. Her head hit the barrier again and again. Wang Liming screamed like a madwoman. "The Soul Gathering Bell is my daughter's, give it back to us." Soul Gathering Bell. Before she could make another move, she was swept by a fierce gust of wind. Hugging Jing Minyao's body, she stumbled and fell to the ground. "Are you done being crazy?" Emo Lien frowned and indifferently retracted her right hand. She looked at her coldly and said, "Your other daughter was right. Jing Minyao has already used the Soul Gathering Bell once. Even if you give her another chance, it will still be useless." "Who said it's useless? If you say it's useless, then it's useless." Wang Liming was obviously crazy. Hugging Jing Minyao, she slammed into the barrier and screamed like a madwoman. "I don't care. This soul-gathering bell originally belonged to the Panga clan. It should be used by us. Bang! Before she could crash into that isolation barrier, Emolian had flipped her over and sent her tumbling backwards. Wang Liming's face, hands, and body were all covered in blood. It was unknown whether it was from killing Jing Qiao or from her own blood. She slowly got up from the ground with a twisted expression. Suddenly, she threw away Jing Minyao in her hand and rushed in the direction of Arbor. I want you all to die. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's figure flashed and released several beams of saint power. Thousands of vines wriggled upwards and wrapped around Wang Liming's body. At the same time, the swirling air around Wang Liming's body filled the entire area. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal narrowed his eyes and enveloped her in his defensive shield. Immediately everyone heard a loud boom. Wang Liming's entire body was instantly minced into pieces. Pieces of her body fell from the top of her head. Blood rained down from the sky. Xiaomu reflexively hid in Emolian's arms. She creased her small brows and turned her small head away in disdain. This Wang Liming was like a lunatic. She actually wanted to use self-destruction to drag them down to hell with her? How could this be possible? Why didn't she think that there were so many transcendent realms present? How could they let her, a spirit master, self-destruct? It was simply a meaningless self-destruction. When Arbor turned his head to look again, Wang Liming's figure was already gone. Emolian flicked her finger, and a cluster of black flames landed on the corpse on the ground. It burned her until there were no bones left. Burn Jing Minyao and Jing Qiao too. Arbor looked at Jing Qiao, who was facing the sky with her eyes wide open, as if she was questioning God, why she was treated like this. He could not help but shake his head. Chapter 34-27. Wang Liming was truly interesting. She didn't like her daughter, Jing Qiao, very much because of her difficult labor. In the end, she was so deranged that she killed her. This kind of mother simply couldn't compare to her mother, Wei Ziqin. Jojo's Lotus was right. Wang Liming and her mother, Wei Ziqin, were two completely different types of people. With a flick of Emolian's fingers, two clusters of black fire landed on Jing Minyao and her sister's bodies, incinerating them completely. Only then did everyone turn to look at Su Shanshan, who was enveloped by the soul congregation bell with her eyes closed and a peaceful expression on her face. A long time had passed, so long that Arbor couldn't help but slightly clench her fists. Her expression also started to show some unbearable restlessness. Emolian could see her unease, so she reached out to hold her small hand and said softly, "Don't be anxious." Could it be that it was as Lotus said, that the soul congregation bell really might have no effect on eldest senior sister? Arbor's hand, which was hidden in her sleeve, clenched tighter and tighter. The moment she thought of this, even her breathing seemed to quicken. Emolian pulled out her other small hand, which was hidden in her sleeve, and gently pried open her fingers one by one. She smiled and looked down at her. "Jojo is nervous." Arbor nodded, her pair of black eyes staring unblinkingly at the man in front of her. Although she had already prepared herself for the worst, she still had great expectations and hopes in her heart. She wanted eldest senior sister to come back to life. She wanted eldest senior sister to return to the Holy Water sect. She had been lying alone in the ice coffin for so many years. It had been long enough. "Quickly look," Qi Xianxian shouted, drawing Arbor's attention back to eldest senior sister. The three beams of light shot out by the soul-gathering bell had already disappeared, and the whole bell was shrinking in the air. Then, it suddenly broke into pieces and fell to the ground. Emolian's reaction was the fastest. With a turn of his body, he had already arrived at Su Shanshan's side. With a move of his finger, a thin piece of white brocade unfolded and floated in the air, catching many of the fragments. The white cloth and a handful of shards fell into Emolian's hands. Emolian lifted a corner of the white satin and nodded in satisfaction. He then turned to smile at Xiaomu, who had hurried to his side. "Although this sacred weapon is useless now, its fragments can still be reused." Xiaomu nodded with a MHM before saying apathetically, "Although this soul congregation bell is a sacred weapon, it is a consumption-type sacred weapon. If we really want to compare, it is inferior to my feral ink. Emolian." The venerable peach blossom immortal beamed. Jojo, quickly see if your senior sister has woken up. Arbor nodded, and quickly walked to Su Shanshan's side. She crouched down and cautiously inched closer to Su Shanshan's small face, which had regained a bit of color. Her fingers very gently touched Su Shanshan's face. The feeling under her fingers was still very icy. Arbor almost didn't dare to touch her to see if she was breathing. Was this really just an empty joy? The little fellow's eyes were filled with disappointment. Before this, she had repeatedly warned herself to be calm. She had to be calm. She couldn't have too high of an expectation for anything, so as to avoid being endlessly disappointed. But actually she still couldn't help but feel a little elated in the depths of her heart. Qi Xianxian and the rest cautiously glanced at Arbor. Chapter 34-29. But later I hugged Third Martial Aunt's head and placed her by your side. I called you eldest senior sister, and I called Third Martial Aunt, but neither of you paid any attention to me. As Arbor spoke, she felt that she was really strange. Why did it seem like transparent water droplets were falling from her eyes again? Su Shanshan's heart tightened. She felt that some of her memories seemed to be a bit jumbled up. Although she didn't quite understand what was going on, she still reached out and pulled her little junior sister into her arms, hugging her tightly. Then she said very firmly, word by word, Don't worry, little junior sister. Eldest senior sister won't lie to you in the future. Definitely. Arbor lay on her shoulder soundlessly. It seemed like she could only feel her body trembling slightly, but Su Shanshan felt that her shoulder was scorching hot, as if something was burning a hole there, as if something was pouring into her veins. It was as if everything in front of her seemed to come alive again. The two apprentice sisters went to Paradise Planet, as if they had endless things to talk about. Su Shanshan discovered that time had already moved forward by 4 years. Naturally, she was very surprised. She had too many things to understand. Although you asked Jojo 10 questions, she would probably only answer 1. But Su Shanshan had long gotten used to this little fellow's personality, so they could chat for a while. Emolien's side was much more straightforward. After Jojo left, Emolien summoned Huifeng and had him take people to finish off the Panga clan's patriarch Jing Ti, as well as all of the Panga's direct descendants. Don't leave any loose ends behind, Emolien instructed indifferently. Today, they brought so many people to force the Panga clan's patriarch Jing to finish off his daughter, Jing Minyao. Although Patriarch Jing had given in, Emolien never believed that human nature would give in so easily. Patriarch Jing probably hated her and Jojo to the core right now. If he was given a chance, he would definitely plot a counterattack. That would be too troublesome. Emolien did not want to waste her time cleaning up the mess left by the Panga clan. She might as well annihilate all their direct descendants. As for the old, weak women and children of the Panga clan, for the civilians, it did not matter much who was in power. As long as they had enough food and drinks, they were happy enough. Huifeng led the Purple Forest Guard, and a group of Clear Pass city border guards over. Arbor and Su Shanshan chatted for a while. Seeing that she didn't look well, he was worried that her body might not be able to take it, so he persuaded her to rest. By the time Arbor came out of Paradise Planet, Huifeng had just returned with his men, and he quietly reported to Emolien several times. Emolien nodded indifferently, indicating for Huifeng not to say anything else. She then walked towards Arbor. Xiaomu glanced at him in confusion. What are you blabbering about? Nothing. Emolien smiled and pinched her little face. Jojo, come with me. Okay. Arbor followed him and returned to the Panga clan's camp. Arbor suddenly remembered the people he had stored into his storage talisman. He waved his hand and let them all out. The Panga clansmen all knelt down in gratitude and thanked him for saving their lives. They had all seen how dangerous the situation had been and remembered it in their hearts. The crown princess had put aside their former enmity and stored them into a magical artifact. That was how a great disaster had been averted. Chapter 34-30. To the Panga clansmen, they didn't know that it was Arbor's storage talisman. They only thought it was a spatial artifact. In any case, no matter what, the crown princess was so magnanimous that she didn't vent her anger on the Panga clansmen, and saved their lives regardless of the gains and losses. Everyone was grateful and respectfully knelt on the ground to express their gratitude. Emolien had Huifeng make arrangements for these people. Before Arbor left, he heard Huifeng say in a clear voice, "Your clan leader was obliterated by the heavenly Tao in this earth tornado. As for your madam and the two young misses, they were also executed by our crown prince for disobeying his superiors. You don't have a leader now. You should first elect a new leader, and then talk to our crown prince." Arbor looked up at Emolien curiously. "Jingjia is dead?" Emolien smiled and nodded. "Yes. You sent someone to do it." She remembered that Jingjia was still alive, and well before they left the camp. Emolien didn't deny it. He nodded and held her hand. "Jojo, don't be afraid." Arbor was speechless. "What's there to be afraid of?" Emolien blinked and looked down at her. "Don't you think I'm scary?" Miss Chiao shook her head and hugged his waist. "Everything you do is for me. Why would I think you're scary? Plus, you're so beautiful. Nothing you do is scary at all." Sir Jojo rolled his eyes and looked away. Huh. What was Jojo thinking just now? His expression was a bit cute. Emolien couldn't help but ask curiously, "Jojo, what were you thinking about just now?" "Nothing." Seeing that Emolien was determined to get to the bottom of things, Arbor quickly changed the topic. "What did you say you were going to take me to see?" Come take a look." Chiao Chiao. Emolien pulled her small hand and led her into an airtight wall made of sand and soil. As soon as he walked in, he was dazzled by the white spirit coins on the ground. "Is this where Jingjia keeps his spirit coins?" Arbor grabbed a handful of spirit coins and found many jade stones buried underneath. She took out a piece and looked at it. A rare smile appeared in her eyes. "This jade is not bad. Get someone to take it out and polish it. Make more blank jade talismans for me." "All right." Emolien naturally agreed happily. She pulled Arbor to a small table at the side, took out a black spatial ring, and placed it in her hand. "Clan leader Jing is dead, but his spatial ring is still here. Take it and see if there's anything useful inside." Arbor nodded. Recently, she had organized the Heavenly Province Assembly and the Heavenly Pill Auction. Nurturing people to draw talismans and refine pills was like burning money every day. She had to send them a batch of talismans and herbs every few days. She probably wouldn't be able to make a profit in the first year. However, when these little guys grew up, she wouldn't have to worry about making money every year. Moreover, nurturing a group of talisman masters and alchemists would be very beneficial. If she wanted to do something in the future, she wouldn't feel that she was short of manpower. Arbor used her divine sense to open clan leader Jing's spatial ring. She found that there were many things inside. It was enough for the Heavenly Province Assembly and the Heavenly Pill Auction to burn money for a while. Moreover, there were so many spirit coins on the ground. It should be enough. Arbor happily put all the spirit coins on the ground into a storage talisman. Then, she followed Emolien out. "Your Highness." Chapter 34-31. Two purple forest guards pushed a bearded, doddering old man over. They shoved him to the ground and used their feet to stop him from struggling. "Your Highness, this person is sneaking around here." "Who is he?" "Speak. Who are you?" Emolien looked at him coldly, a cold glint flashing through her eyes. This person was hiding here sneakily. He was most likely a servant of the Jing clan's direct line of descent. Was he waiting for an opportunity to take revenge? She had to see if she was cut out for it. The Divine Province's crown prince and crown princess sure aren't impressive. Slap. Before the old servant could finish, the purple forest guard slapped him across the face. His face tilted slightly to the side, and his hair fell messily to the ground. His wrinkled old face suddenly showed a trace of twisted hatred. "You bunch of bandits. Not only did you steal our clan's treasure, the Soul Congregation Bell, you even instigated those spineless shrimp clansmen to submit to you. And now, you even killed the clan head and madam." "Oh." Arbor sized up the old servant from head to toe, then asked coolly, "Who are you to the Jing clan head?" "You don't need to know." Slap. The purple forest guard slapped him again in anger at his arrogant attitude. "How dare you speak like that?" The purple forest guard glared at him, then turned to the young crown princess. "Crown princess, This subordinate must deal with this person. Arbor glanced at him and nodded. Since you're so loyal, go accompany your clan head and madam. Fear flashed through the old man's eyes. Then he put on a fierce front and angrily rebuked. Wait. Xiaomu turned her head to look at him with a spurious smile. If you really are a loyal old servant, then where were you when I killed your clan leader just now? Why didn't you jump out to protect your master? You're afraid of death, aren't you, old man? Since you're just a sneaky villain, can you stop trying to flatter yourself? The purple forest guard glanced at the old man with disdain. He grabbed the old man's arm, pinned him behind his back and pushed him. Let's go. He was an eyesore. He was really annoying their little crown princess. Crown princess, this old servant wants to make a deal with you. The old servant suddenly became anxious and shouted while twisting his body. Since it's a deal, then show your sincerity. Why do you have to be so pretentious? Arbor looked at him coldly. This old man had been secretly hiding here and sneakily looking around. He had originally been waiting for her and the crown prince. He had even put on a disgusting expression of loyalty to protect his master. Who exactly was he trying to show? The old man's eyes flashed and he hurriedly said, This old servant is called Jinggu. Yes, I am clan head Jing's personal servant. Arbor didn't say anything and waited for him to continue. Not long ago, the clan head ordered me to send people to the lower star field to investigate the crown princess background. When the second miss was brutally slaughtered by the crown princess and was carried back to the soul congregation bell to gather her soul, clan head Jing ordered this old servant to send people to investigate. Arbor looked at the old man expressionlessly, a burning flame dancing in her eyes. Seeing that she didn't say anything, the old man could only continue. After that, this old servant sent a group of people to the lower star field. The first few times we went, we were blocked outside by a large shielding formation. The old man carefully glanced at Arbor's expression. Chapter 34-33. That way, they would be able to find the treasures buried by clan leader Jing. Jinggu was truly regretting his actions now. He was suspended in the air, and the whip in the purple forest guard's hand was lashing out at him without hesitation. If he'd known earlier that this black-hearted couple was so terrifying, he wouldn't have come looking for trouble even if he was beaten to death. Jinggu groaned inwardly. My life is over. Dig 3 feet into the ground and push aside all the sand walls. Everyone dig here. Jinggu was shoved to the ground, his hair disheveled. His old eyes were filled with anger and despair. You bandits, you'll all die a horrible death. Bandits. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at him in amusement and kicked him. Aren't you also coveting the treasures buried by clan leader Jing? As the leader of a clan, he was naturally rich enough to rival an entire nation. The small treasure room Emolien had brought Jojo to was clearly only a small part of what was exposed above. Jinggu, this old man, was truly crafty. Regardless of whether it was his pretense of being a loyal servant at the beginning, or his fawning talk about wanting to be the clan head, it was all to mislead the young crown prince consort, and His Highness the crown prince into thinking that he was a petty person without any shrewdness. They would think that Jinggu, this petty person, wanted to be the clan head. He was trying to divert the young couple's attention. Actually, that wasn't the case. His true goal was the treasury key hidden in the soul convening bell. With this treasure, it didn't matter if he became the Panga clan leader or not. He also didn't want to eat dust and drink dirt all day long in this desert. With wealth, he would naturally be able to fly far away. No matter where he settled down, he reckoned that he would be a person with wealth in his hands, and would be able to get whatever he wanted. Bang bang. The large excavating tool forcefully excavated the ground that was buried in layers of sand, revealing a long and flat underground staircase that was about a few meters wide in the middle. Arbor handed several dozen storage talismans to the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, and had him take little Taisui, Liang Qingqing, and the others down to collect the items. They busied themselves until night fell. After the group of people came up, Qi Xianxian's small face was flushed red. She pulled Arbor and chattered nonstop. You don't know, but that Jing clan leader is really a master at accumulating wealth. I feel that no matter how much money your small organization like the Heavenly Elixir Store burns, 30 million spirit coins a day. It can still burn for decades. Arbor's eyes lit up. He took the pile of storage talismans from the venerable peach blossom immortal and checked them one by one. His eyes lit up even more. I'm rich. Everyone looked at her amused expression and couldn't help but want to laugh. Jing Ting of the Panga clan was indeed a hidden magnate, as Xianxian said. What do you want? Arbor asked his companions. Everyone shook their heads. They usually ate and lived on Paradise Planet, so they didn't really need anything else besides. Jojo had left all the treasures in Paradise Planet's treasure vault. If they needed anything, they could just call him and go get it. Arbor blinked, nodded, and said to Qi Xianxian, This time, the Mu clan won against me. Later, we can go to their Morning Sun Pavilion to play. I'll take you there. In other words, it was better to go back and scam the Mu clan. Everyone. The Mu clan was really unlucky to have provoked a little devil like you. Chapter 34-34. Seeing that everyone was speechless, Sir Jojo turned his head and said, All right, the matter here is over. Let's, Crown Princess, Crown Prince. The new leader of the Panga clan requests an audience. Prince Emo nodded calmly and gestured for the guards to let him in. The new leader of the Panga clan was a rather young man. After seeing the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, he bowed. Li Zhuang greets the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Emo Lian glanced at him coldly. What are your plans for the future? The Panga clan is a clan that loves peace the most. Li Zhuang placed one hand across his chest and swore solemnly. From tomorrow onwards, I will lead my people into the depths of the desert and search for the existence of an oasis. The Aurora Desert is so vast and boundless. It can't be all sand, can it? Li Zhuang said. Arbor glanced at him and suddenly said, Then you can search in the southeast direction. Her origin of Holywood allowed her to clearly sense the existence of an oasis thousands of miles to the southeast. It was a very large oasis. If the Panga clan built their residence there, they would be able to survive well in the future. They would not have to give up their land and rely on the Emperor of the Divine Land. Of course, without the Panga clan as a hidden danger, the Emperor of the Divine Land would not have to be so paranoid. He felt that the Panga clan, who was so close to Qinghua City, might one day start a rebellion for the sake of survival. In this way, both sides would benefit from it. Li Zhuang's eyes lit up. Obviously, he trusted the young Crown Princess very much. Of course, this was also because the Crown Princess' benevolence at the moment of the Earth Tornado's attack had completely convinced the young leader of the Panga clan. He nodded and said, Thank you for the reminder, Crown Princess. The members of the Panga clan will always remember your help. Right. Princess Jing. Shi Li Zhuang looked at Arbor and Emolian hesitantly. As a matter of fact, although Chief Jing's family was not very reliable, Princess Jing, who had been protecting a member of the Panga clan and had made great military achievements, was indeed respected by all her people. However, after the Earth Tornado struck, they had never seen the princess again. They did not know how she was doing now. Xiaomu creased her brows. She had also remembered. In the previous battle with Jing Linyao, she seemed to have coincidentally advanced to the Divine Realm. She just didn't know if the advancement would go smoothly. Because of the violent Earth tornadoes, Arbor's attention didn't leave her at all. If she was at the critical moment of her advancement, she would be affected more or less. Jing Linyao was probably doomed. If Jing Linyao comes back, will your words still count as the clan leader? Emo Lian looked coldly at the young leader in front of her. Even a fool could see the threat in her eyes. He didn't want Jing Linyao to instigate and fool them, and they would turn around and deal with his Qiao Qiao. If these people were still troublesome, Prince Emo would not be merciful to them. The Panga clan can swear to the heavens that they will never betray the Crown Princess. Li Zhuang hurriedly explained with one hand across his chest. Very good. Emo Lian glanced at him coldly. Remember what you said today. Chapter 34-35. Go back to your oasis obediently and live a good life. Don't do anything unnecessary. Yes, I, Li Zhuang, will remember what your highness said today. Li Zhuang bowed respectfully. When he turned to leave, the cold sweat on his forehead was already dripping down. The Crown Prince's eyes were too cold. What he meant was that he had to hold the position of clan leader and not let Jing Linyao take it away from him again. If Jing Linyao and the members of the Panga clan were up to some trouble to deal with the crown prince's wife, the crown prince would certainly not tolerate them anymore. Clan leader. At this time, several Panga clan members walked over with a woman who was screaming desperately and an average-looking young man. Li Zhuang glanced at them and sighed. Concubine Shui, young master, I'm really sorry. What are you doing? Li Zhuang. What are you doing, Li Zhuang? Li Zhuang. Concubine Shui shrieked and glared at him. Her eyes seemed to be spitting fire. Li Zhuang glanced at the mother and son coldly and sighed. Suddenly, he raised his voice and said, the old clan leader has passed away, and there is no one to accompany him. Concubine Shui and young master, for the sake of the former clan leader, swear to live and die with clan leader. Concubine Shui's eyes were so wide that they almost fell out of their sockets. She kept twisting her body and screaming, no, no. Who wants to accompany that dead man to hell? No, no. Li Zhuang. Let go, let go. The young man's eyes were lifeless, and his whole body trembled. He wailed in a low voice. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Li Zhuang raised his hand and ordered people to take the mother and son away and send them on their way. An old man stepped out and nodded at Li Zhuang in appreciation. Clan leader, you don't need to feel guilty. Keeping concubine Shui and young master Jing alive is a disaster. Concubine Shui has never been a person who is willing to stay still. If she gets a chance, she will definitely implicate the clan leader in the future. The Panga clan has been through too many hardships. The old man sighed. In the future, we will be safe and smooth. This is the wish of all the Panga clan members. Jolin suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up from the bed. Looking around, his mind was a little muddled. What is this place? She shook her head and subconsciously held her forehead with one hand. She was in a very elegant bamboo house, and the furniture in the house looked very exquisite. There was a string of small wind chimes hanging at the door, tinkling in the wind. Arbor was the first to sense that his sister had woken up. He entered Paradise Planet and arrived at the small bamboo building behind Peach Garden Slope. She reached out and pushed the door open. There was a creak. One of the two sisters looked into the room, while the other looked back at each other. Their gazes just happened to meet. Jolin stared blankly for a while before his eyes suddenly lit up with surprise. Sister. She stretched out her hands and stumbled over to Qiao Mu, throwing herself into Qiao Mu's embrace. She even rubbed her head against Qiao Mu's chest as she muttered, this dream was so good. I dreamt of Big Sister again. Big Sister seems to be more beautiful than before. If Xiao Sun knew that I dreamt of Big Sister, he would be very jealous. Xiao Sun is an idiot. He wants to dream of Big Sister every time, but he can't. Ha ha ha. Chapter 34-38. Xiao Lin, who boarded the Crimson Nimbus Blue Wave ship for the first time, found everything very novel and couldn't resist wandering around the ship. Unexpectedly, it only took a short hour to return to Sikong Planet from the Divine Province. The Crimson Nimbus Blue Wave ship wandered through the sea of stars for no more than a few seconds before arriving at the passageway. When it passed through the passageway, Xiao Lin didn't feel anything at all. It was completely unlike when she first arrived, when her entire body suffered from the intense pain of being sliced apart by the airflow. This feeling was simply too wondrous. It was as if time and space had been changed in the blink of an eye. By the time the party returned to the Mo Kingdom capital, starry night had descended, and darkness had pervaded the earth. The old great king Mo was currently in a terrible fix. Gong Chang strode in on his short, chubby legs as he reported loudly, Great King, bad news. His 12th Highness has brought people to the Qiao family. What? Mo couldn't resist slapping his forehead. He abruptly turned to look at the elderly man who was currently sitting on the main seat and coldly looking at him. At this moment, a trace of cold sweat had appeared on the old great king's forehead. Gong Chang, and also saw that elderly man at a glance, and was so frightened that he rolled to the ground, not daring to look up with his head on the ground as he inwardly cursed. Old Senior Wu truly appeared and disappeared unpredictably. When did he come to the palace? Gong Chang, and didn't know that this old Senior Wu had already arrived earlier, and had even finished discussing matters with Mo Lei. Due to this senior's oppression, Mo Lei had already agreed earlier that he could no longer send troops to reinforce the Qiao family from now on. Unexpectedly, Mo-12, this little rascal, actually left the palace without permission and brought people to help. Didn't they just capture this little 12 the day before yesterday? Who knew that this child would actually be so disobedient? Mo Lei cautiously cast a glance at the elderly man and cupped his hands, saying, "Senior Wu." The elderly man casually waved his hand, stopping the old great king from continuing. His eyes carried a trace of coldness as he glanced at him and said, "It seems that the great king wants to feign compliance." "No, that's not it." Cold sweat broke out on Mo Lei's forehead. He stood up with an uneasy expression. "Bring him here." As the cries reached his ears, a group of beautiful concubines, as well as some pale-faced princesses of different ages, were all escorted over. Royal father, save me, royal father." 10th Princess Mo Lei's tear-stained face was covered with tears. Royal father, the mother of the 9th princess and the 10th princess, concubine Shi, was also trembling in fear. She covered her handkerchief and sobbed. Suddenly, he was stopped by a cold reprimand that was neither loud nor soft. "What are you crying for? Shut your mouths." Empress Zhao looked coldly at concubine Shi and her 2 daughters. Great king, save us." Concubine Shi had just opened her mouth when Empress Zhao raised her hand and slapped her face. "I told you to shut up. Don't you understand?" Shi Pin immediately kept quiet out of fear. "Heh." Old Wu sneered. He raised his hand, and had people drag out a young woman with a beautiful face and luxurious clothes from the group of concubines and princesses. The old great king's heart was about to break when he saw that woman being dragged out. He looked at old Wu with a deathly pale face, and repeatedly waved his hand, saying, "Let's talk things over. My lord, please talk things over." It's said that this noble lady Ying is the great king's most favored concubine. Old Wu chuckled coldly, and indifferently waved his hand at one of his subordinates. Chapter 34-39. Noble Lady Ying didn't look sideways. She didn't even make a sound when she was pushed out by the crowd. She only stared coldly at old Wu. Good. Old Wu smiled in praise. "You have backbone. You're a woman with backbone." Although he was smiling, he couldn't hide the cold murderous intent in his eyes. The great King Mo stood up in a fluster and shouted at old Wu. What do you want? We already promised you that we won't send reinforcements to the Qiao family. Why are you still capturing people? Is the great king joking?" Old Wu snorted, his gaze sweeping over the red-faced great King Mo. "Didn't this old eunuch say just now? Did your 12th prince bring reinforcements again?" 12th? How could 12th do this? Concubine, she cried out sharply. "It was this consort's order." Empress Zhao coldly interrupted concubine Shi's cry, and looked indifferently at old Wu. "The great king is being threatened by a crafty villain like you because of our lives. But they're afraid of death, but this consort isn't." Empress Zhao stared coldly at old Wu and said with a sneer, "If you want to kill me, then do as you please. The Qiao family is the crown princess's maternal family, which means they are our Mo family's in-laws. Now that our in-laws are in trouble, how can we not help them? Great king, do what you should do. Don't worry about us." "What?" Concubine Shi's face instantly turned incomparably pale. She couldn't help but roar at Empress Zhao. "Queen, you don't want to live, but we. My Mo Shui and Mo Li are still in their prime. Can you bear to let them sacrifice their lives for the Qiao family and die in vain?" "Idiot." Empress Zhao glared at her coldly. "Today, we were indifferent to the Qiao family's matter. In order to survive, we disregarded the Qiao family's safety. When my son returns in the future, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your rotten life." Concubine Shi's face turned pale. Thinking of Prince Mo's methods, she was speechless and kept quiet out of fear. Mo Lei sighed. He was caught in a dilemma. This batch of experts who had invaded the Mo Kingdom capital were all peak great mystic cultivators. Few people in the entire Mo Kingdom capital could contend against them. Furthermore, not only did they threaten him with the concubines and princesses, but they also threatened him with the lives of some innocent commoners. In these 2 days, they had killed quite a few people on the streets of the Mo Kingdom capital. The entire city had practically flowed with blood, and corpses were strewn everywhere. It wasn't that he only cared about the lives of his concubines and daughters. This also involved thousands of innocent people. He had no choice but to agree not to send more troops to assist the Qiao family. He also knew that once he made this decision, the enmity between him and the little crown princess would deepen. The old great king heaved a long sigh, and his entire body slumped down on the throne. Great king, Empress Zhao's cold voice sounded indifferently. Just stick to your heart. There's no need to have any misgivings. Do as you wish. Do you think they'll really let us off after killing the Qiao family? Let the entire city's commoners off? Empress Zhao said apathetically. They came from the upper realm with the intention of destroying the Qiao family or abducting their entire family. Perhaps we, the insiders, have already become their next targets to be silenced. Emole's mind cleared up a little for once. Chapter 3441. That's enough. Empress Zhao scolded. It's useless to force the great king like this. The imperial army won't do anything to the Qiao family. Even if the great king gives the order, it's useless. Not only that, the commander of the imperial army, Hui Feng, has already brought a group of people to the Qiao family. Old Wu's face suddenly darkened, and he stared coldly at Empress Zhao. This old man was very ugly, and when he stared at Empress Zhao, his inverted triangular eyes turned outward, emitting waves of cold light. It seems that the queen really doesn't want to live long. Seeing 2 subordinates boldly reaching out to grab the queen, the Empress Dowager suddenly flashed and slapped out with her palm. This slap landed on old Wu's subordinate unexpectedly, and he was shaken back a few steps. That person immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a backhand, he forcefully swept his palm across and landed on the Empress Dowager's shoulder. The Empress Dowager was knocked back several steps. With a bang, her back hit the lattice door frame. Empress Dowager! Mou cried out. Empress Dowager Meng suddenly coughed up blood, and the great king was frightened and rushed over. Together with Empress Zhao, he quickly reached out to support the Empress Dowager. Mother! The 2 of them called out in unison, and looked at the Empress Dowager worriedly. It's all right. Empress Dowager Meng waved her hand and looked angrily at old Wu. You don't have to threaten His Majesty anymore. The Queen is right. The commander of the imperial army, Hui Feng, will definitely choose to protect the Qiao family in the face of a great enemy. Commander Hui only listens to the crown prince. Even if you threaten the great king, it's useless. Then let the people of the North Battalion come in. Before dawn tomorrow, I want you to break the defense array of the Qiao family's outer courtyard. Ha 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 ha. Empress Dowager Meng couldn't help but laugh out loud, and then her eyes turned cold. Nonsense. A middle-aged man with a gloomy face walked in. He nodded at old Wu and said, There's no need to talk to them. The Mo Kingdom's royal family doesn't know what's good for them. Just kill a few of them, and throw them up on the city wall. Those who resist should learn their lesson. No, don't kill me, don't kill me. Mo Li's clothes were barely covering her body. At this moment, her eyes were already in a mess. When she heard the word kill, she scrambled towards the crowd. However, someone stepped on his back forcefully. One of Elder Wu's subordinates cruelly pulled Mo Li's scalp, forcing her to raise her chin. Let's start with our beautiful little princess, ha 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 ha. It's a pity that such a beautiful body didn't even have the chance to taste a man before she died. As the man spoke, his eyes suddenly flashed, and he suddenly reached out to pick her up. No, let me go, let me go. Let me go. What are you doing? Emole's eyes were bloodshot. He picked up an inkstone and threw it at the man's back. You beast, let go of my daughter. Humph. Old man Wu's subordinate sneered. He tilted his head and easily dodged the attack. He carried Emoli and walked towards the side hall. He laughed arrogantly. Since she's going to die anyway, why not let her enjoy herself before she dies? Isn't that better? Empress Zhao clenched her jade-like hands in her sleeves and shouted angrily, Do it! Pung pung! Sounds suddenly came from the doors and windows. Countless figures rushed in through the doors and windows, charging towards Elder Wu and the others. Chapter 3442. That gloomy middle-aged man harumphed coldly before laughing out loud. What use is the counterattack of ants? With a flick of his sleeve, he flung a dozen royal guards flying out and heavily flung them against the doors and windows. With several booms, even the gorgeous wall on one side of the palace was pushed down. The group of royal guards were smashed until their heads bled, but they still managed to prop themselves up and pounce at Elder Wu and that gloomy middle-aged man again. Elder Wu's two subordinates were also forced to join the fray. They didn't seem to exert much strength, but a group of low-level minor mystic cultivators was knocked down. Everyone fell to the ground with their heads bleeding, but no one uttered a sound. Queen Dowager Meng and Empress Zhao also immediately joined the battle. Even with Queen Dowager Meng's peak level, 14 cultivation, she still wasn't Elder Wu's match. Thus, it could be said that the addition of Empress Zhao and the others was truly only a drop in the bucket. A bunch of ants actually dared to resist? That gloomy middle-aged man sneered. He lifted a royal guard and snapped his neck with one hand before flinging him out heavily. The corpse crashed at the feet of concubine Shi and the others, eliciting terrified sobs and howls. At this time, noble Lady Ying had already crawled up from the ground. She forcefully shoved a delicate royal concubine beside her and coldly said, "What's the use of crying? Wipe your tears and watch carefully. You didn't work hard enough, so you're being slaughtered like ants. Royal father, royal mother, this son has come too late to save you." Two uneven shouts came from outside the palace, accompanied by the shouts of the soldiers. Emolei's complexion paled. Noble consort Lin, who had originally been maintaining her composure, also couldn't help but cry. "Stupid son, what are you doing here?" Third Prince Emo Tung and Second Prince Emo Lu simultaneously kicked away some of the rubble in front of the palace gates and quickly walked in with a group of soldiers. Lu Fei, who was on the verge of collapse, nearly fainted. She had the same idea as noble consort Lin. It was good that her son wasn't in the palace and hadn't been captured. It would be best if her son was quick-witted enough to escape as far as possible. It would be best if he could escape the Emo Kingdom capital and never return. From the looks of it, the Emo family would not be able to escape this calamity for the next 2 days. But now, Imperial Mother. Emo Lu hurriedly reached out to support his mother. The fourth Princess Emo Shuang at the side also stopped making a fuss today. She cried out while weeping, "Second brother, what are you doing here? Aren't you sending a sheep to the tiger's den by coming here? It won't help at all." Emo Lu said in a deep voice, "All of you are in this palace, how can third brother and I not come?" In the past, when there were no external enemies, it was fine for his own people to fight and scheme against each other. However, it was different now. Now that his entire family was in the hands of others, if they did not rush over to save them, then they would be too unworthy of being sons. At this moment, Emole was already in tears. He nodded and said, "Good, good. Today we, father and son, wife and children, mother and family, will live and die together once again. Ha 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 ha." Thump, thump. As they spoke, that gloomy middle-aged man, together with Elder Wu and his two subordinates, had already taken care of all the imperial guards. The group of soldiers that Emo Lu and Emo Tung had brought were also barely holding on. They retreated step by step in defeat along with the second prince and third prince's group, protecting Emo Kingdom's great king and his royal concubines, as they simultaneously retreated into the main hall. Queen Dowager Meng was injured, her complexion somewhat pale. Chapter 3443. Empress Zhao gasped for breath as she reached out to support her. Grief welled up in her heart, and she couldn't help but say, "Mumuhu, Chinchia isn't afraid of death, but it's a pity that I won't be able to see my son again before I die." Empress Dowager Meng thought of the delicate couple and couldn't help but tear up. She nodded repeatedly. "It seems that we're going to die here today. You're so young, yet you're not afraid of death. What do I, an old woman, have to fear?" Empress Dowager Ming couldn't help but sigh. At the same time, Emoyu had already seized an opportunity to drag back the unconscious Emoli who was rolling on the ground. She looked back and quickly tore apart the pink curtain that had fallen to the side. She forcefully tore off 2 pieces and wrapped Emoli's naked body. Emoli, Emoli. She gently shook her twice. Emoli suddenly opened her eyes and revealed a frightened expression. She waved her hands and screamed, "No, no, no, don't catch me, don't catch me. Emoli, it's okay, Emoli." 8th sister. Emoli couldn't help but burst into tears when she saw that it was Emou who was holding her. "You've been wronged." Emou bit her lips and tightly hugged her trembling body. 8th sister, are we all going to die here today? Crown Prince Gidge won't come to save us, right? Crown Prince Gidge is too far away from us. Emou tightly held her hands and said, "Perhaps he hasn't received the news of our death yet. But don't be afraid. Our family is together. Even if we die, there's no need to be afraid." Emoli curled up in her arms and couldn't help but cry. She was really scared. At this moment, she couldn't help but blame the Qiao family in her heart. If it weren't for these people who wanted to catch the Qiao family, but couldn't break through the Qiao family's barrier and catch them, how could they cause so much trouble and harm others? Truly a group of evil spirits. In her opinion, the Qiao family should stand up themselves to prevent this disaster from continuing. If the Qiao family still had the slightest bit of conscience, they would not have allowed these evil people to barge into the palace and threaten their royal family, while they hid in their turtle shell like nothing had happened. Emou helped Emoli, who was wrapped in a curtain, to sit down at the side. He didn't know that this 10th sister already hated the entire Qiao family. Concubine, she hurriedly walked over and reached out to support her daughter. However, before her fingers could even touch Emoli's arm, Emoli swung her hand away. Concubine, she looked with astonishment at her daughter, who had a frosty expression. For a moment she was speechless. Emoli glared at Concubine, she with resentment. Don't think that she didn't see it just now. When she was caught by that lecher and was about to take her away, her mother didn't dare to come out to save her at all. She just blindly hid in the crowd. Her courage was even less than Empress Zhao's. At the most critical moment, Empress Zhao, who had always been strict with this group of concubine daughters, came out to save her. However, her biological mother couldn't help at all. Emoli just now Mufei was concubine. She's lips trembled and she couldn't speak. What should she say? Should she say that she didn't dare to save her daughter because of the situation? Or should she say that she was afraid and couldn't wait to hide? How could she care about her daughter's life and death? Emoli turned and walked behind Empress Dowager Meng and Empress Zhao. Chapter 34-44. She was almost disdainful of Concubine She. Concubine She looked at such a cold daughter and sobbed. 9th Princess Emoshui helped her to the side. In a flash, everyone was forced to a corner of the inner hall. The concubines kept sobbing, but they didn't dare to cry out loud. Emolei, Empress Dowager Meng, and Empress Zhao stood side by side. In front of them was a group of guards who were forced to retreat. Bang! The gloomy middle-aged man killed a young guard and threw his body in front of the screaming concubines. Achieving the desired effect, the gloomy middle-aged man smiled and looked coldly at Emolei and the others. He said in a cold voice, "You want to do this the hard way. Since you are so stubborn then." He reached out and grabbed Empress Zhao's neck with his fingers spread open. Emolei's expression changed and he cried out, "Queen." Just as he reached out to resist, he was swatted away by the other's palm. His body fell back crookedly. Empress Dowager Ming reached out to support him. She took a breath and sent out a burst of mystic energy towards that person's hands. She tried to save Empress Zhao. But at this moment, Old Wu suddenly attacked. He punched Empress Dowager Ming's right hand. Everyone heard the sound of the Empress Dowager's arm breaking. In an instant, Empress Dowager Ming's right arm fell down. Empress Dowager! Empress Dowager! Mother Empress! Everyone cried out involuntarily in fear. The group of young guards were even more fearless as they pounced forward, wanting to stop the violent Old Wu. However, to Old Wu, these people were nothing more than a group of insignificant dust particles. Old Wu roared, Mantis trying to stop a chariot. He kicked away a young guard who was hugging his leg. The child was kicked away and hit a pillar heavily. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Old Wu grabbed Empress Dowager Meng's injured hand and squeezed it tightly. The Empress Dowager's face was pale and cold sweat poured down. but she didn't even make a sound. She just looked at him coldly. Today if I die, the entire Mo kingdom will die. It doesn't matter if everyone dies, but in the future, our fate will be the fate of your entire family. Empress Dowager Meng's eyes were like a pair of cold souls under the ice and snow. It was so cold that Senior Wu couldn't help but shiver. Old Wu sneered and grabbed Empress Dowager Meng by the neck. Is that so? If I kill all of you, who will know in the future that it was us who did it? Do you think the Crown Prince of the Divine Land knows what happened today? Ha ha ha. He laughed complacently, his voice filled with killing intent. I didn't know that you bunch of rascals actually dared to come to the lower star region to show off your might. In the Divine Land with your cultivation, what can you be called? Coming to the lower star region of the Sikong star region, you sure showed off your might. You really opened my eyes. A cold voice came from outside the dilapidated palace. Even the voice seemed to be covered with a layer of cold murderous intent. Frost fell on the ground. It was as if the temperature of the entire area dropped a lot in an instant. Old Wu's hand, which was holding Empress Dowager Meng's hand, twitched slightly. He turned around abruptly and saw a tall figure against the light, striding into the ruins of the palace. Just 4 level 10 spiritual masters, coming to the lower star region to show off their might. Chapter 3445. Your family should be very proud of you, right? Mo Lian walked into the hall with his hands behind his back, looking at these people with a spurious smile. It was as if he wasn't angry at all. His gaze didn't even linger on Empress Dowager Meng and Empress Xiao for even half a second. He was completely focused on Elder Wu and the gloomy middle-aged man. Elder Wu's hand trembled, and his grip on Empress Dowager Meng's neck tightened. Don't come over. He suddenly sensed that his life was in great danger, and his entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly. It was a very strange feeling. He clearly didn't know the young man in front of him, and there didn't seem to be any powerful energy fluctuations coming from this young man. But he felt extreme fear. Extreme fear. Huifeng. Yes, Your Highness. Huifeng answered with a grave expression as he walked quickly to Mo Lian and lowered his head slightly. He had served the Crown Prince for many years, and had long sensed the Crown Prince's current mood fluctuations. Although the Crown Prince was still smiling like a spring breeze on the surface, he already had thoughts of killing people in a fit of rage. How could His Highness the Crown Prince not be enraged when he saw this scene of devastation? I want them alive. Yes. Huifeng responded forcefully. With a raise of his hand, 7 to 8 figures instantly appeared behind His Highness the Crown Prince, and abruptly dashed forward at lightning speed. 2 against 1, like eagles catching chicks, they instantly rescued Empress Xiao and Empress Dowager Meng from the enemy's hands. They then twisted the arms of Elder Wu and the others behind their backs, and ruthlessly kicked them to their knees. Elder Wu's face was filled with terror, and he didn't even have time to react before he discovered that he had been subdued. Impossible. Elder Wu twisted his body and was about to unleash a vicious attack when Huifeng pressed his head down and forcefully slapped him to the ground. With a crisp bang, Elder Wu discovered that his vision was covered in blood, and there was a bloody hole in his head. He was already feeling a bit dizzy. Very good. Mo Lian sneered. His voice wasn't very loud, but it was as if winter had descended. Darkness enveloped them, and a ruthless, low pressure pressed down on everyone's hearts. Take a guess. How do you think I will deal with you? As Prince Mo said this, he quickly walked forward and reached out to support Empress Dowager Meng. Grandmother, I'm late. Empress Dowager Meng raised her other uninjured arm and touched his cold cheek. She couldn't help crying. Before this, Prince Mo and Arbor had split up because they felt that the situation was quite dangerous. One went to the palace to rescue the emperor, and the other led people to the Qiao family. At the same time, the Qiao family was also struggling to hold on. Everyone in the Qiao family was currently sitting in the main hall, raising their heads to listen to the rumbling thunder coming from the roof. The group of people outside had climbed onto the roof and were wantonly destroying the defense array glyphs. This talisman array had already lasted for several days, and its talisman energy was being consumed at a terrifying speed. I'm afraid that this defense array will be broken in less than an hour. second Uncle Qiao Zhongxing said with a dark expression. Qiao Zhongbang also nodded. He took out a talisman from his pocket and stuffed it into Wei Ziqin's hand. If the array is broken later, take Xiao's son, Xiao Hu, Xiao Yao and sister-in-law and leave first. Chapter 3446. Madame Ren immediately jumps up from the chair. No, I won't leave. Be good. Qiao Zhongxing sighs and pats the back of his wife's hand to comfort her. You and sister-in-law, take the children and leave first. Father. Xiao Hu anxiously calls out. Qiao Zhongxing glares at his son. You won't even listen to your father's words. No, father. Enough. Qiao Zhongxing lovingly looks at his son and pats him on the shoulder, saying, Your wife is pregnant, so it's inconvenient for her to move around. You have to take care of her nearby. Your uncle and I will be fine, don't worry. Bang! A loud sound comes from above, and Xiao Hu seems to feel a burst of fine sand falling down in front of his eyes. The roof is about to be broken open. Bang! Suddenly, a human face appears above the roof. It shakes slightly and then disappears. Everyone heard the sound of arrows flying in the air from outside. Ding ding dong dong. Many of the arrows even nailed to their doors and windows. Uncle Qiao, are you okay? The 12th prince is here. Wei Ziqin slightly tightens her hand holding her youngest son, and the expression in her eyes suddenly changes as she looks at Qiao Zhongbang. Qiao Zhongbang also hurriedly shouts, 12th prince, why are you here again? Didn't I tell you to go back to the palace? Quickly go back to the palace. Mou laughs brightly. Uncle Qiao, I promised my big brother that I would protect you well. Now that the Qiao family is in danger, how can I just stand by and watch? Qiao Zhongbang feels even more anxious. Just as he is about to speak, he suddenly hears Mou laugh. It seems that a friend is here. Uncle Qiao, don't worry. We can still hold on for the time being. Even if they can hold on, they can't. They are hiding in this room, but they let the 12th prince, a 14-year-old boy, lead people to risk their lives for them. How can their Qiao family do such a thing? Qiao Zhongbang and Qiao Zhongxing look at each other and nod in unison. Qiao Zhongbang firmly grasps his wife Wei Ziqin's hand. I know that if I want you to leave now, you definitely won't be willing. But you have to promise me that in times of danger, you have to take them away. Xiao's son, Xiao Hu, as well as my unborn grandson, I'll have to rely on you and sister-in-law to protect them. Qiao Zhongbang gripped his wife's hand with a heavy tone and exerted a lot of force. Qiao Zhongxing opened the door of the main hall from the inside. Then, he strode out of the room with his family members in tow. The Qiao family's courtyard, which was originally in good condition, was now devastated and in a complete mess. The perfectly manicured courtyard was now a scene of withering flowers and trees. Wei Ziqin gritted her teeth as she looked at the scene in front of her with heartache. Mother, I'm scared. Qiao's son held his mother's hand tightly, his black eyes wide open. Who are they? Bandits. Wei Ziqin looked coldly at the dozen or so strangers who appeared in front of them. It was these dozen or so people who had turned the entire Marquis of Jiyuan's residence into a mess. Marquis Qiao, Madame Qiao, you are finally willing to show yourselves. The 12th prince ran over with a group of guards, shielding Qiao Zhongbang's group behind him. He wiped his sweat and said, Why did you come out? Qiao Zhongbang chuckled bitterly. How can we let you all stay outside and bitterly endure for us while you do nothing? Don't worry, Commander Hui brought several thousand people outside. If it really doesn't work, we will use the human wave tactic. Chapter 3447. No. Wei Ziqin sternly interrupted the 12th prince. We can't implicate our friends any further. This is our old Qiao family's matter to begin with. We are well aware of what these people want. Don't they just want to capture us and use us to threaten my daughter? Heh. Wei Ziqin sneered. Although I'm just a woman, I'm not afraid of death. As she said this, she secretly stuffed the transportation talisman into Madame Neiren's hands. Madame Neiren's entire body stiffened. She only felt that the hand Wei Ziqin was holding her hand was frighteningly hot. Sister-in-law wanted to share life and death with Big Brother? She wanted her to take the children and run first? We don't need to know who you are. Wei Ziqing gazed coldly at the dozen or so experts in front of her and said indifferently, "You only need to remember one thing. However we die today, you and your families will definitely be 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times more miserable than us in the future." "Shut up!" the middle-aged man in the lead shouted furiously. He raised his hand and swept it at Wei Ziqing's face. Suddenly, a figure flew up, his arms crossed in front of his chest as he forcefully received that middle-aged man's palm strike. His feet dragged against the ground as he retreated several steps, a wisp of blood flowing out of his mouth. Little Sixth Zheng. Mou was alarmed, and he quickly rushed up to hold his arm. "Are you all right? Little Sixth, Little Sixth." Huge Bear Squad's Captain Gao led a group of people over and surrounded him. Everyone scrambled to support him, but they saw that Sixth Young Master Zheng's eyes were resolute. Although his injuries weren't light, he still shook his head at them to indicate that he was fine. Wei Ziqing's heart rose high, her hands tightly clenched into fists, and she pursed her lips as she stared unblinkingly at the other party's leader. That was a middle-aged man who looked no more than 40 years old. There wasn't a bit of stubble on his face, and his appearance was rather ordinary. However, his eyes appeared especially sharp. "Heh," Miao Ringgui sneered. He folded his arms and calmly looked at this group of weak ants in front of him. "You should know that even if you rushed over, you would only be courting death." Xiao Sun saw his sinister eyes and suddenly shouted, "It's you! You captured my second sister! Or did you take my second sister?" Previously, in order to protect her son, Wei Ziqing had already pushed her son behind her. Now that Xiao Sun rushed out, Madame Ren quickly held him down. Madame Ren dragged Xiao Sun into her arms and hugged him tightly. She looked warily at the middle-aged man who looked impatient and was about to flare up. "You mean that little girl?" Miao Ringgui chuckled. "I didn't catch that little girl. That little girl from your family is most likely no longer on Seacombe planet right now. Don't worry. She will die a worse death than any of you." Miao Ringgui laughed. He seemed to be very interested in looking at the group of ants in front of him. His face was filled with anger, and he revealed an expression that said he wanted to die but couldn't. This gave him a great sense of accomplishment. In the land of the divine god, he might not have the highest cultivation level. When he saw the various divine masters, he could only bow his head and bow his head. But it was different in this place. Here he was a level 12 great spiritual cultivator. Although he was suppressed to the peak of level 15 great mystic cultivator realm, but... Chapter 3448. Dealing with these ants in front of him was a piece of cake. It was definitely more than enough to deal with them. Moreover, he had a spirit beast. With a wave of his hand, Miao Ringgui released a giant dog emitting hot flames all over its body. As soon as this thing was released, it bared its eerie fangs at the Qiao family and let out a loud roar. Xiao Sun widened his dark eyes in horror, and he abruptly buried his head in second Aunt Ren's embrace. Madame Ren also subconsciously hugged him tightly, her eyes quietly suffused with horror, and she tightened her grip on the transportation talisman in her hand. The instant this blazing hound appeared, it occupied half of the Qiao family's courtyard. Its enormous body was like a giant mountain filling this courtyard. Its pair of awe-inspiring beady eyes flitted past the Qiao family and ultimately landed on the huge bear squad. Captain Gao placed one hand in front of the squad members and led them back several steps. The colossus in front of them truly exceeded everyone's expectations. Roar! That giant hound bellowed and suddenly jumped up with great speed, charging in little Six Zheng's direction to bite him. Xiao Zhongbang shouted, "You dare!" He and Xiao Zhongxing flew forward and slashed at that giant dog's tail with their swords. There was a crisp clang. The long sword in Xiao Zhongbang's hand almost flew out of his hand. The other party was a level 8 spirit beast, while they were a level 11 mystic cultivator and a level 9 body cultivator. The difference between them was simply like heaven and earth. That giant dog swept its thick tail at Xiao Zhongxing. "Second brother!" Xiao Zhongbang bellowed with reddened eyes. Faster than words could tell, Mou's tall and straight figure charged forward, grabbing second Uncle Qiao and forcefully kicking him out. Following which, he held the sword in front of his chest with both hands and used all his strength to block the large dog's tail that swept over him. Mou borrowed the force of that blazing hound's attack and flew back a dozen steps. He kicked the wall behind him before stabilizing himself and blocking that giant dog's tail. He lowered his head and saw that the sword in his hand seemed to have cracked. With a twist of his body, he came out from under the giant dog's tail. He threw away the long sword in his hand and took out another sword from his inner world. The sword light flashed and cut off a piece of broken wood in front of him. Miao Rengui narrowed his eyes and stared greedily at the sword in his hand. Oh, a mere great mystic cultivator actually had more than one spirit tool in his inner world, as expected of the rich prince of the Emo kingdom. Mou ignored his sarcastic taunts and turned to look at little Sixth Zheng, only to see that the members of the huge bear squad were struggling to cope with the dog's paws. "Captain, take them away," little Sixth Zheng roared. "If you want to leave, then leave. I'm not leaving." Huagu strode forward, nimbly dodging to the side of the dog's paw, and roared provocatively at the Inferno Hound. "Come on! Come and get me!" Roar! As if enraged by Huagu, the Inferno Hound moved and pressed down on this plump woman. Huagu turned around to dodge and shouted at a young man with a bamboo figure. "Ai, take Mr. Zhong and leave first. You haven't even seen the Crown Princess, so there's no need to risk your life. You said she's a member of the huge bear squad, so she's my teammate." Chapter 3450. So what if it's a defensive talisman array? I don't believe that with so many of you. You can't break a tiny defensive talisman array. Hurry and go. Miao Rengui shouted anxiously. Those cultivators from the Divine Province were originally around level 10 spiritual masters, but after coming to the lower star domain, their realms were suppressed to the peak of level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator realm. But even so, dealing with these ant-like members of the Qiao family in front of them was still a piece of cake in their eyes. However, they didn't expect that once they made a move, the situation would always be very different from what they expected. To be honest, MO12 gave them an unexpected surprise. Next, little Sixth Zheng and the others also summoned their mystic beasts and spirit beasts one after another. The entire small courtyard already couldn't accommodate so many people. The four walls were trampled to the ground by the irascible beasts. The Marquis of Jiyuan's estate became a battlefield for the battle beasts. Only the sound of the wind could be heard everywhere, accompanied by beast roars and fighting. Miao Rengui stared in displeasure at the members of the Qiao family, surrounded by the defensive talisman array, and shouted angrily, "Capture the others first." Before he could finish speaking, Qiao Zhongbang flew out of the defensive talisman array. Another faint light circled around his palm, and 60 blue talismans once again formed a defensive talisman array, rapidly enveloping little Sixth Zheng and the others. "Damn it!" Miao Rengui bellowed. "Don't let them shrink back into their turtle shells. Kill!" More than a dozen of Miao Rengui's subordinates simultaneously rushed up and slapped their palms on the two defensive talisman arrays. Madame Neirun tightly hugged Qiao Sun in her arms and pulled him back a few steps. Little Sixth Zheng and the others moved very quickly. After being enveloped by the defensive talisman array, they attacked Miao Rengui's subordinates from time to time. Relying on the protection of the defensive talisman array, Miao Rengui's subordinates were ambushed several times. Among them, a fatty wearing a headscarf was swept in the abdomen by a withered vine released by Ai, and he was almost stabbed by Captain Gao's sword. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and retreated several steps, thus avoiding another withered vine attack that Ai threw at him. Looking down, he saw that the clothes on his abdomen had already been cut open by the sword qi. But with Captain Gao's strength, it would be difficult for him to hurt this profound realm level 15 expert. The fatty jumped up furiously, as if he had been stabbed in the buttocks. Cursing, he took out a giant hammer from his inner world and smashed it at the defense rune array in front of him. Bang! Bang! It was as if he had not expected the defensive array glyphs to be so sturdy and unbreakable. The fatty roared and rubbed his fists, ready to fight against the defensive rune array. Little Sixth Zheng and the others made use of the defensive array glyphs to launch several attacks at Fatty and the others, but they were slapped back every time. If it weren't for the defensive array glyphs protecting them, they would have been injured long ago. Little Six, be careful. Huagu pulled Little Six Zheng's arm and kicked that fatty's left leg. This time, when he kicked out through the defense array glyphs, it was like kicking an iron plate. Huagu hurriedly bent down and stroked her leg, rubbing it back and forth to reduce the pain. Huagu, how are you? Captain Gao called out anxiously. Don't worry, I won't die. This defensive array glyphs is about to be broken, Little Six Zheng said with a cold expression. Judging from the current strength of the attacks, in less than 5 minutes. Chapter 3451. The defensive array surrounding them was about to be broken. This naturally wasn't a good thing. Once the defensive talisman array was broken, they would be no different from little chicks. No matter how Miao Rengui's group fought, they wouldn't be able to resist. Sixth young Master Zheng exchanged glances with Captain Gao and the others before taking a deep breath. A voice kept circling in Little Six Zheng's mind. No matter what, I have to escort the Qiao family out with my life. If something happens to the Qiao family, the little girl will definitely be very sad. Thinking up to this point, their hearts couldn't help but tighten. Little Six, Huagu cried out in alarm. Little Six Zheng flew out of the defensive talisman array and clenched his fists tightly. His whole body suddenly erupted with a terrifying force, and he abruptly charged in the fatty's direction. Little Six, Huagu cried out in alarm. Looking at Little Six's posture, it seemed like he was going to fight someone to the death. Everyone widened their eyes as they looked in Little Six Zheng's direction. They saw him fly up and deliver a powerful blow with both fists, directly blasting the fat man across from him. Even a punk like you wants to. Before that fat man could finish his disdainful words, he suddenly felt a chill in his abdomen. He looked down and saw that Little Six Zheng had stabbed a dagger into his abdomen at an extremely fast speed. Following his hand gesture, he twisted and spun. With a ripping sound, a huge gash appeared on the fat man's abdomen, and blood gushed out. You! The fat man widened his eyes in shock. Using his last breath, he landed a punch on Little Six Zheng's shoulder. Everyone could clearly hear the sound of bones cracking. Little Six Zheng's bones were fractured by this fat man. Everyone widened their eyes in alarm. Little Six's cultivation was the highest among them, having already reached level 14 as a great mystic cultivator. But now, his shoulder bone was also fractured by that fat man's punch. Even so, the fat man was still furious. He felt that it was simply the biggest joke in the world for his abdomen to be injured by a weak ant in front of him. As a result, Little Six Zheng was beaten up violently like a torrential storm. This attracted the attention of many of his companions. Little Six, Huagu and the others dashed out of the defensive talisman array one after another when they saw Little Six Zheng being beaten up by the fat man. Unexpectedly, Little Six Zheng turned around and waved his hand at them, indicating for them to leave first. He only watched as that fat man grabbed Little Six Zheng's arm and fiercely twisted it before kicking him. How could the rest of the people just sit by and watch? It was even more impossible for them to abandon their companions and flee. Bah! Little Six Zheng spat a mouthful of blood on the fat man's face and said with a sneer, "You regard us as ants, but in the eyes of others in the divine province, you people are perhaps inferior to ants." What did you say? That fat man was truly infuriated by sixth young Master Zheng. He covered his bleeding abdomen with one hand and hurriedly took out a healing pill from his inner world and swallowed it. He gloomily stared at the sixth young master, who was covered in blood and whose original color could no longer be discerned from his white robe. He sneered and said, "Stinking brat, today I'll use you as an offering to my saber." After saying this, amidst the jeers of his companions, he put Little Sixth on the ground in a few moves. Then, he raised his fan-sized palm and punched Little Six Zheng's head. If this hit landed squarely, Little Sixth's head would definitely bleed, and he would lose his life. Chapter 3452. Miao Rengui looked at his subordinates who were watching the show and said gloomily, "Why aren't you guys making a move? Why are you only watching the show?" "Boss, don't be anxious. In any case, none of these people can escape today. Let's see how the fatty beats that punk until he cries for his parents first. Isn't that punk arrogant? Let's see how he can still be arrogant now." Even if he doesn't kill that punk with this punch, he'll at least turn him into an idiot. Ha ha ha. I wonder what kind of scene it will be if this gigolo turns into an idiot. A burst of taunting laughter spread among them. Miao Rengui's subordinates all looked engrossed in watching little Sixth Zheng suffer a setback. Some even crossed their arms in front of their chests, assuming a lofty and contemptuous posture. Hua Gu and the others dashed over and yelled stop, their eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. However, with their skills, it was very difficult for them to rescue their companion from that peak mystic cultivator's hands. In the blink of an eye, that fatty's fist, which was the size of a copper bowl, was about to land on little Sixth Zheng's head. Suddenly, a green vine, which was as thick as a person's wrist, shot over from afar and fiercely tugged at that fatty's hand. It directly coiled around his fat wrist 3 to 4 times and pulled tightly. The fatty instantly narrowed his eyes from the pain, feeling like his wrist was about to be broken in that instant. The pulling force was so great that he forgot to scream for a moment. Instead, he dazedly turned his head and looked in the direction the green vine extended. Everyone followed his gaze and looked over, only to see a plain-colored figure, as white as snow, arrive in front of them in the blink of an eye, at an extremely fast speed. As fast as a bolt of lightning. It was only a fleeting glimpse. This person, who was pure and unadorned, had a frosty expression on her face as she coldly gazed at them, as if she was looking at a group of corpses. That expression made everyone unable to help but shiver slightly. They looked at her with a somewhat hesitant expression, and subconsciously took a few steps back. Sister? Sister! It's sister! Xiao Sen's exclamation broke the silence. Everyone stared blankly at the little girl with a cold expression standing above the ruins. She just stood there quietly without making a sound. Her eyes were as cold as water as she looked at everyone. For a long time, she didn't say a single word. However, just by standing there like that, the killing intent and evil aura all over their bodies swept towards them like waves that splashed the sky. Miao Rengui couldn't help but tremble slightly. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the little girl. Who are you? He purposely used a very gentle tone to spit out these 4 words. It was as if as long as he calmly asked, the fear in his heart would be extinguished. However, what answered him was a green vine that suddenly shot out and viciously whipped him in the face. Pa! The burning vine whip landed on Miao Rengui's old face. He was so shocked that he couldn't help but tremble and jump up. It was just a reflexive action. After he jumped up, he realized that his actions were as hilarious as a clown's. His hand trembled slightly as he reached out to touch the bloodstains on his face. Miao Rengui couldn't help but roar angrily. Stupid girl, how dare you? Pa! 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 Chapter 3453. One after another, the vine whip landed on his old face, body, neck and head again and again. Miao Rengui didn't even have a chance to breathe. Everyone stared at the scene in front of them, dumbfounded. The little girl didn't say a word. She just swung the vine whip in her hand and hit Miao Rengui's face again and again. Seeing this, Miao Rengui's subordinates were all shocked. They couldn't help but quietly retreat in all directions. You little ants, where do you think you're going? The peony fairy smiled and flashed to the front of the fat man. She stretched out her finger and poked the back of his head, giggling. The bell-like laughter inexplicably made the fat man tremble. He couldn't help but feel a little scared. Even though the woman before him appeared to be in the prime of her youth, possessed a voluptuous and graceful body that would make one drool. And her face was also extremely beautiful. But he didn't know why. But he just felt that she was dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. Stupid man, why are you staring at me like that? The peony fairy smiled and poked the back of the fat man's head again with her finger. This poke made the fat man suddenly feel a sharp pain in the back of his head. Reaching out to touch the back of his head, he immediately felt blood on his hand. His eyes immediately widened. Oh, I'm so sorry. I used a little too much strength. The peony fairy twisted the fat man's arm with a smile. The fat man suddenly cried out. Cold sweat rolled down his head. His eyes were wide open, and his face was distorted by the erosion of pain. He felt that his arm was already broken. The appearance of this arm didn't change, but the bones inside were probably broken. And it was the kind that was broken into pieces when touched. It was as soft as noodles. He could even hear the sound of bones inside, which was very terrifying. Xiao Mu's apricot eyes coldly swept an indifferent glance at that shrieking fatty. The moment she glanced at him coldly, the peony fairy suddenly turned hostile. She slapped the fat man's face, and couldn't help scolding him angrily. "You're a big man. Why are you screaming? My little girl doesn't like to hear such a terrible scream." That slap immediately knocked the fat man's chin down. The fat man tilted his face in pain. After his chin fell, saliva dripped down his clothes. Seeing this, the peony fairy gave him a look of disgust. She kicked him back to Dao Wuji's side as if he was a piece of trash. She waved her hand and said, "Go and deal with him. He's so dirty that I don't even want to touch him." When Dao Wuji heard this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. He immediately grabbed the fat man like he was grabbing a chicken, and directly threw him into the pile of ruins behind him. The pile of rubble was originally a wall, but now, half of it had collapsed. The fat man was hanging there like a dead dog, unable to free himself for a long time. The rest of Miao Rengui's men were so frightened that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at them, and nodded with a smile. "Do you want to go over and sit by yourselves? Or do you need us to send you over?" He pointed at the pile of rubble, where the fat man was standing with a smile on his face. It was like a spring breeze, looking very warm. Miao Rengui's men all shuddered. They quickly shrank their bodies and moved their feet slightly. Chapter 3454. One of the men, who was a few years younger than the rest, took a few steps back, turned around abruptly, and flew out of the courtyard wall. Looking at his posture, he wanted to abandon his companions and escape. Moreover, he also thought that he could definitely escape under the eyes of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, and the others if he was caught off guard. Escape. 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 He had to escape. Jichen narrowed his eyes. His powerful divine sense turned into a bolt of lightning and struck the man's back. The invisible pressure was like an insurmountable mountain. It hit the man so hard that he fell to the ground. He rolled twice on the ground, gasping for breath, and coughed violently. The young man felt as if his shoulder had been cut open by a heavy long knife. All the bones in his body seemed to have been completely shattered by this blow. He did not know what was going on. The rest of the people's expressions changed abruptly. They looked at Ji Chen in horror. They had seen it very clearly just now. This person did not move at all. He did not even move a finger. It was definitely just a wisp of divine sense. After releasing it, he beat the man to the ground. What did this mean? It meant that this person's divine sense was far above all of them. It was like an insurmountable mountain. It was too high to reach. How could they endure this? Want to escape? How would you be able to escape when someone else's divine sense enveloped you? Miao Rengui turned to look at the young man who was groaning on the ground and could not get up. The rest of Miao Rengui's subordinates all trembled and walked sensibly toward the ruins where the fat man was. They lowered their heads like roosters that had been defeated in a fight. How could they still be in high spirits and at ease? When they looked at their leader, Miao Rengui, they could not bear to look at him directly. The fat man and the others could not help but tremble secretly when they saw such a miserable state. The leader had been hit by countless vine whips all over his body. He was on the verge of death. He breathed in less than he breathed out. Would Arbor let him die so easily? The answer was obviously impossible. She put away the vine whip and stared coldly at Miao Rengui in front of her. She looked at this guy who was lying on the ground like a dead dog, not moving at all, as if he was dead. Xiaomu shot him a chilly glance, and Boundless Blade immediately ran up. He jerked his buttocks and dragged Miao Rengui over like trash, ruthlessly tossing him at her feet. Xiaomu glanced at the man who was paralyzed on the ground and stepped over him, walking toward her parents and family, without consulting anyone. Don't let him die. Her cold voice was like a bit of frost spreading from the depths of winter, so cold that it made people keep quiet out of fear. Xiao Zhongbang and Wei Ziqin recovered from their shock and rubbed their eyes. They could not believe that Jojo was standing right in front of them. Zhou. Xiao Qiao. The whole family hurriedly withdrew the defense array glyphs and ran out. surrounding her in an instant. Arbor secretly clenched her fists. She thought of the dangerous scene just now. If she had come a step later, something might have really happened. Jojo, quick, come and take a look at young Master Zheng's injuries. Wei Ziqin was very careful. She did not have time to chat with her daughter. She hurriedly grabbed her daughter's hand and pulled her to little Sixth Zheng's side. Arbor crouched down next to little Sixth Zheng. She could not help but exude a cold aura when she saw that he was covered in blood. Chapter 3455. This guy's shoulder bones were fractured, and his arms were also broken in several places. Most importantly, he suffered a brutal beating from that fat man. Not only was his body riddled with scars, but his internal organs also suffered very serious internal injuries. He truly looked too wretched, and Arbor couldn't help but feel pain for him. Does it hurt? Little Sixth Zheng shook his head with feigned ease. Don't worry. If it weren't for the fact that he was injured, Arbor really wanted to give him a good knock on the head. How could she not worry? This guy's fighting style just now was simply too reckless. It was completely a desperate stance of harming the enemy at the cost of his own life. Her needles were very swift, and she only needed to insert a few needles to stop the bleeding. She then took out a medicine bottle from her inner world and poured out a pill for him to swallow before saying, "The injuries to your internal organs can't be healed in a short period of time." As she spoke, she had already perfectly connected his broken bones, carefully applied ointment, and fixed them with a splint. This tendon-rupturing bone-mending ointment can't touch water for 2 hours after it's applied. It can be removed after 2 hours. If you can move your arms perfectly fine, that means there aren't any major problems. If it still feels swollen and sore, then you have to tell me immediately. We still have to apply the ointment again. Little Sixth Zheng was somewhat lost in thought as he gazed at the little stoic girl prattling endlessly in front of him. It seemed like they hadn't seen each other for too long. At first, he thought it was his misconception and kept feeling that the little girl in front of him was unreal. But now, after listening to her endlessly instructing him, she raised her hand to poke his forehead. Only then did Sixth Young Master Zheng return to his senses and smile at her. "I'm very happy that you can come back, Jojo. I'm also very happy to see you guys again." Little Sixth, Captain Gao. Flower Mushroom, seeing that Little Sixth's life was no longer in danger, Wei Ziqin completely relaxed. Feeling that her heart was still pounding nonstop like a drum, Wei Ziqin reproached him. "Little Sixth, you really scared your Auntie Wei to death just now. When this child was fighting with that fat man, he truly didn't even care about his life. If Jojo hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would have been too horrible to contemplate." "I'm fine, Auntie Wei." However, Little Sixth Zheng was very clear that he hadn't gone crazy at all just now. His mind was even clearer than at any other time. He only followed his heart and did his best to protect the Qiao family. He didn't want to leave any regrets in his life. For example, disappointing Jojo. Captain Gao walked over excitedly and said, "Jojo, you came just in time." If Jojo had come a few minutes later, they probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. At this moment, they saw that the group of people who were originally bullying them were as obedient as quails, huddling in a corner and not daring to move or make a sound. Everyone felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure. Arbor nodded at the members of the huge bear squad. Her gaze swept past them one by one before finally landing on the demonic cultivator E, and her eyes lit up slightly. The members of the giant bear squad had gathered. Her eyes were so bright that everyone noticed that she was a little strange. Logically speaking, it should be the first time the little girl had met E and the others, but that gaze. It felt like they had known each other for a long time. Captain Gao touched his nose, but he didn't say anything. He put his strange thoughts aside. Chapter 3456. He had interacted with the little girl many times, and was used to her strange attitude, so he did not find it strange at all. On the other hand, Ai and the others looked at the little girl curiously. Although they felt strange, they did not say anything. "Mother." Arbor released Xiaolin with a wave of her hand, and let the little girl run to her parents. Wei Ziqin, Qiao Zhongbang, and the others were pleasantly surprised. They did not expect that when their eldest daughter came back, she also brought back their youngest daughter, whom they had been worried about these past few days. Lin, are you alright? Are you hurt? The family asked all at once. I'm fine. Xiao Lin waved her little hand, and a few drops of tears flashed in her eyes. She said emotionally, I was taken to the divine continent by them. It was sister who saved me. Sister and brother-in-law rushed back as soon as they knew that everyone was in danger. So that was it. Wei Ziqin and the others were enlightened. They were still wondering how Jojo could come back so timely. It turned out that he met Xiao Lin. Little Mo is back too. Xiao Zhongbang smiled. Really? Mo you heard and quickly ran over to ask, where's my big brother? Arbor's gaze fell on the child. Compared to more than a year ago, Xiao Yu had grown much taller, and his little face had lost its former naivety. He looked much more mature than before. She could not help but reach out and pat his head. Your big brother has already rushed to the palace. I'm sorry to have frightened you. Eldest sister-in-law, I'm fine. Mo quickly exclaimed. He was really not injured just now. He was just shocked when he saw Xiao Luer injured. This time, it's all thanks to you, Commander Hui, and young General He Tian who came to rescue us. Wei Ziqin said with emotion. I wonder how the situation in the palace is now. Mother, don't worry. With Lian here, nothing will happen. Arbor comforted them and turned his head to look at Miao Ringgui, who was forced to kneel on the side. His eyes suddenly became dangerous. When Dao Wuji saw the little girl looking at him, he hurriedly dragged Miao Ringgui, as if he was dragging a bag of trash, and threw him in front of the little girl. He clapped his hands and said with a smile, I thought these people had 3 heads and 6 arms, but when I looked carefully there was nothing. TSK, they are really bold. They actually dared to come to this little girl's maiden home to cause trouble. Benefactress, why don't you release this little monk? This little monk hasn't seen your mother for a long time. Let me see them. She couldn't deal with the little monk's repeated female benefactor is your mother, and female benefactor is your father. Arbor only felt that this little fellow was too long-winded and kept on shouting. It was like a demonic sound piercing through his brain. Thus, he helplessly let him out. Benefactress is her mother, benefactress is her father. When this strange appellation came out, everyone's attention was immediately drawn to him. When Wei Ziqin saw the little monk, she almost cried. She hurriedly went up and hugged the little meat bun who was running over. She had a surprised and happy expression. Kong, why are you here? This little monk was also saved by benefactress. Mother, I accidentally picked up Kong. Arbor reached out and picked up the little fatty. He said with a helpless expression. We'll talk about this later. Right now the most important thing for her was to treat their wounds. Chapter 3457. Arbor's treatment of injuries was very fast. In less than a moment, she had treated everyone's injuries. After this battle, everyone more or less had some small injuries on their bodies. Xiaomu distributed different pills, medicinal liquids, ointments, and the like to them. After applying them externally or ingesting them orally, it didn't take long for everyone to feel that their injuries had visibly taken a turn for the better, and their spirits were also much better. Seeing that everyone was fine, Arbor was relieved. She finally thought of Miao Ringgui who had been thrown to the side by Dao Wuji. At this moment, Miao Ringgui was like a quail kneeling at the side, not daring to even breathe loudly. This was a world of difference from the overbearing attitude he had before. How overbearing he was before was how funny he was now. Arbor looked at him coldly. This person's body was covered in wounds, and he looked battered and exhausted. Qiao Sun struggled free from Madame Neiren's embrace and scuttled to Qiao Mu's side. He threw himself into her arms and complained loudly. Eldest sister, they said they want to capture us alive. They want to capture me and Dad and Mom. When Xiao Lin heard this, she was also infuriated. Just as she was about to step forward and kick Miao Ringgui, Xiao Mu swiftly caught her. At the same time, Miao Ringgui, who had been lying on the ground like a quail, suddenly stood up and almost grabbed Xiao Lin's wrist. Seeing this, Dao Wuji slapped that person's face. Yo, you still know how to pretend to be a grandson and lie low. What, you still want to capture a hostage in order to escape? Xiao Lin raised her hand and patted her chest. Her pair of black eyes immediately widened. Big sister. It's this person. It's his big brother who captured me. I heard them talking. He called that black-clothed man his big brother. Arbor immediately understood and nodded. Her eyes were cold. She looked at Miao Rengue and asked indifferently, "Are you going to confess honestly? Or should I ask someone to search your soul?" Miao Rengue's expression changed drastically when he heard the word soul search. He couldn't help but shudder. This little girl kept mentioning the word soul search, and said it so casually. She didn't look like a kind-hearted person at all. He looked into the little girl's eyes, and immediately understood that she was not joking. If she did not confess honestly, the little girl would definitely not let her off. Soul search? Perhaps she would use something even more terrifying than soul searching to deal with him. Arbor looked at him coldly. Have you thought it through? You only have one chance to choose. I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. Miao Rengue was almost scared out of his wits. He quickly answered while trembling. Miss, if you have any questions, please ask. I will definitely tell you everything I know. Arbor ignored the man's flattery and asked directly, Who captured my sister? Miao Rengue looked at Xiao Lin with trembling eyes. Seeing this, Xiao Lin was furious. Thinking about how this person wanted to capture her as a hostage, she wanted to go up and kick him a few times. You're about to die. Why are you still stuttering? Xiao Lin shouted unhappily. I asked you something. Why are you looking at me? Miao Rengue was very flustered at this moment. He personally saw his big brother capture the little girl in front of him, and said that he would bring her back to the divine lands. Now this little girl appeared here unharmed. Chapter 3458. What did this mean? It meant that something might have happened to his big brother, Miao Sheng. Otherwise, how could he have fallen into such a situation? Arbor raised his wrist and whipped him. What's there to consider? Just speak the truth. If you speak a single word of falsehood, Arbor gazed deeply at him, there will be no place for you in the deepest hell. Miao Rengue's heart constricted, and he hastily kowtowed in fright. He repeatedly said, I absolutely don't dare to deceive Mississippi. TT, that's my big brother. The one who captured your sister is my big brother Miao Sheng. You are not members of the Panga clan. Arbor's cold gaze swept over him. Speak, which clan do you belong to? Miao Rengue shrunk his neck and couldn't help but tremble. His eyeballs rolled uncontrollably as he hastily said, We are indeed members of the Panga clan. A vine whip landed on his eye, directly whipping half of his eyeball into the air. Miao Rengue rolled on the ground in pain, wailing incessantly. His other eye glared at Arbor resentfully. Not a single word of truth. Arbor flew into a rage. His eyes glinted sharply as he stared at that person. He then turned to look at He-chun, who was standing leisurely on the side. Peach Blossom. The little stoic was impatient, revealing an expression that said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. The venerable Peach Blossom immortal couldn't resist rolling his eyes. He took a few steps forward and poked her forehead with a finger. I've said it many times, my name is not Peach Blossom. This venerable Peach Blossom immortal is called He-chun. He winked and pursed his lips in dissatisfaction. Without waiting for Miao Rengue, who was lying on the ground, to stand up, He-chun's bony palm abruptly pressed down on Miao Rengue's skull. Miao Rengue immediately let out a blood-curdling scream, as if he was experiencing the darkest and most terrifying thing in his life. His entire body trembled uncontrollably, and his lips couldn't help but twitch. Jolin was shocked. She pulled her brother, and took a step back at the same time. The siblings were confused, looking at Miao Rengue, who seemed to be experiencing something terrible. They couldn't help but look at each other. Second sister, what is he doing? Xiaosun asked in confusion. That uncle looks like he's in a lot of pain. Jolin nodded and could not help but whisper. Just now, big sister said that she wanted to search his soul. I'm afraid this is it. What's the use of soul searching? Amitba, benefactress's younger sister, benefactress's younger brother. You two are too young now. It was normal that he didn't understand. It was better to stay away from such dangerous and frightening matters, so as not to spoil your naive natures. Excellent, excellent. Jolin and Jolin looked at each other in confusion. What was going on? The two of them, brother and sister, were told by a 5-year-old monk. Are you two still too young? Big sister, I really want to slap him, Xiaosun mumbled. The corner of Jolin's mouth twitched. She raised her hand to rub her brother's little head and nodded heavily. She also wanted to pull this chubby little monk over and viciously take 2 bites. Ha ha ha. After searching Miao Rengui's soul, he chinned directly through him to the ground. Miao Rengui was not completely dead. At this moment, he was still struggling at death's door, and his eyes were rolled back. His eyes were filled with the color of death, and his throat was letting out waves of roars before he died. Right now, he only had a trace of consciousness left. His entire person was basically useless. Chapter 3459. He slumped to the ground, his only eye glowing with resentment. He tried his best to turn his head to look at Arbor. He's from the Sure family. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal walked to Arbor's side. He took out a clean handkerchief and wiped his fingers with a disgusted expression. Then, he threw the handkerchief to the ground and shattered it into pieces with a blast of saint power. Mysophobia was a disease. Arbor glanced at him and asked, "The Sure family? That's your family?" This guy's big brother, Miao Sheng, is the second daughter of the Sure family's first branch, Shi Yongqian's close confidant. So this incident was caused by Shi Yongqian? Anger roiled in Xiaomu's heart, and her eyes, which were as clear as a cold moon, seethed with a thunderous fury. What a Shi Yongqian! What a Shi family's second daughter! She hadn't had time to settle the score with her for what happened in her previous life. Now she had the guts to attack her family again. It was simply too wonderful for words. Arbor's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Shi Yongqian, you've lived long enough. Miao Rengui's 8th-level spiritual beast, Little Taisui, walked over with a shrunken blaze hound in his hand. Before he could say anything, he suddenly heard a series of barks. The 3 puppies that had been peacefully staying on Paradise Planet suddenly jumped out. One of them jumped onto Little Taisui without a word and slapped the blaze hound to the ground with one paw. The other 2 puppies dashed forward and patted the head of the trembling flame hound from the left and right. The 2 puppies carefully rubbed the blaze hound's head with their paws, as if they were caressing something. However, the following actions and images were not as beautiful. One of the puppies used its sharp nails to cut open the blaze hound's head. Furry took out a spirit beast's crystal core and looked like it was in a difficult position. It looked like it was wronged as it swallowed the power inside the crystal core. Everyone was dumbfounded. They couldn't help but turn to glance at Arbor. Arbor didn't have the mind to pay attention to the 3 puppies. She was completely focused on the Shi family's attack on her. She had to get back at them for this. Since Shi Yongqian dared to send people to the lower star zone to make trouble for her, she should know the consequences of courting death. Arbor took a deep breath. She recalled how she had suffered at the hands of this woman in her previous life, and the coldness in her eyes deepened. Because of the blaze hound's death, Miao Rengui, who was already in a daze, suffered another heavy blow to his mind. He instantly collapsed to the ground while fresh blood gurgled out from his mouth, and his eyes were already extremely unfocused. His Highness the Crown Prince is here. Hui Feng's joyful voice sounded from outside the door. Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince. All the soldiers knelt down and saluted. Mo Lian strode over with a group of purple forest guards, followed by the Marquis of Stability, Zhao Sheng, and the others. Rise. Mo Lian waved her hand and had them rise. She quickly walked into the ruined Xiao estate courtyard. She couldn't help but frown. Judging from the extent of the destruction, it must have been a major battle. Fortunately, she and Jojo had arrived in time. Otherwise the consequences would have been unthinkable. Mo Lian quickened her steps. She arrived at Arbor's side in the blink of an eye. Jojo, are you all right? Greetings, Your Highness. Everyone hurriedly bowed respectfully. Chapter 3460. Mo Lian's gaze swept over them one by one, and she hastily said, Everyone is Jojo's relatives and friends, so there's no need to be overly courteous. Dad, Mom, we've startled you. Xiao Zhongbang and Wei Ziqin smiled with gratification. Little Mo, you and Jojo came back just in time. It was a scare but not a mishap, a scare but not a mishap. How's the palace? Arbor asked in a low voice. Grandmother is injured, and it's quite serious. Ah, grandmother's injury is very serious. Mou was startled when she heard this, and she hastily ran to their side. Eldest brother, where is grandmother injured? She injured her right hand. I'm afraid you'll have to take a look at her injury. Mo Lian frowned, and turned to grab Arbor's small hand as she spoke. Wei Ziqin was instantly anxious. Jojo, quickly enter the palace, and examine Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Okay. Arbor nodded. Mom, don't be anxious. I'll definitely treat grandmother. Wei Ziqin recalled that little Sixzheng had also injured his shoulder and arm just now, and it was extremely serious, but her daughter had also roughly treated it in a few strokes. Presumably, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager should be fine as well. Then let's not delay any longer. There's nothing else to do here. Jojo, quickly enter the palace with little Mo. Okay. Arbor nodded and looked back at Miao Rengui, who was staring at the sky with his eyes wide open. He had already died from the backlash of the spirit beast's death. He snorted coldly. This person really got off too easy. Those people are useless now. Arbor swept a glance at the row of people gathered next to the ruined wall and said aloofly, including this Miao Rengui. Crush them into ashes and find me an exquisite little jar to store them in. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't resist twitching his mouth, and he nodded with a grin. Oh my God, even when their little miss did such a cruel thing, she still appeared so amusing. The little stoic's eyes were aloof, but her words were gentle and soft, as if she wasn't going to crush their bones and scatter their ashes. I want to give Miss Sure a gift. She turned around and glanced at He Shurchen. We have to wrap it up nicely. Otherwise, the host will only say that our etiquette is not good enough. Yuan Shurchen couldn't help but cough lightly and nod. Got it. If the little girl wanted to give Miss Sure a gift, then the gift couldn't be too light. 1 jar wasn't enough, so 3 jars would be just right. Little Tai Sui glanced at Ji Chen speechlessly. Do you know what you're called? In the eyes of others, what you're doing is called being an accomplice to a villain. How could that be? My Jojo is so cute. How is he helping the evildoer? He was obviously helping the little guy catch the evil and eradicate the traitor. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. He pulled little Tai Sui over and pushed it toward the pile of rubble. Remember to be careful. He had to be fast, ruthless, and accurate. Don't dawdle. I'll go inside and find a few exquisite jars and jars. Do your best. Little Tai Sui. What happened? Why did he become the culprit? When Fairy Ginkgo saw this, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. Oh my God, little brother Tai Sui. Do you want big sister to help you? I'll thank your whole family first. Little Tai Sui irritably rolled its eyes at Fairy Ginkgo before walking toward Miao Rengui's subordinates, who were already scared silly. Miao Rengui's dozen or so subordinates were all scared to death. From the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, and the others subduing them with thunderous methods, to soul-searching Miao Rengui and killing his 8th level spirit beast. Chapter 3461. After this series of events, they had long since been scared out of their wits. How could they possibly think of resisting? When they saw little Tai Sui walk over, one of them hurriedly fell to the ground and cried tearfully, Venerable Immortal, please spare my life. Before the suppression of cultivation realms, Luo Rengui was the one with the highest cultivation base among them. Now that Luo Rengui had been dealt with so easily, how could the remaining people not be afraid? Now they were filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they would never have followed Luo Rengui to the lower star region to show off their might. Now they were in big trouble. They had to pay with their lives, just to show off their might. This was obviously not a good deal. However, the situation had already been decided. No matter how much they kowtowed and begged for mercy, even if they kowtowed to death, no one would pay them any attention. Little Tai Sui glanced at them indifferently, then slapped the top of their heads with a backhand. At the same time, Arbor and Emolian rushed back to the palace at top speed. They hurriedly headed for the Empress Dowager's longevity palace. Along the way, Arbor couldn't help but frown when he saw the devastated state of the palace. Someone came to the palace to cause trouble? Yes. When I arrived, someone surnamed Wu brought 3 people and captured a large number of concubines to threaten father. When Emolian thought of her old father's frightened appearance, the anger in her heart couldn't help but overflow. Even though this adoptive father of his was muddle-headed and bad, the love he had for him did not contain any benefits, and there was no discount at all. Moreover, although this old man sometimes lost his wits due to lust, he still listened to his ministers. All these years, the entire Emo kingdom could be considered to have had good weather, and the people were in good health. If another obstinate and self-opinionated person were to lead the Emo kingdom, they might not be able to do as well as his father. He didn't think that these people would be so bold as to come to the lower star region and touch his family. Xiao Mu's expression also darkened, and her eyes emitted a chilly glint. This group of people came for me. They were sent by Shi Yongqian. Of course, she also had a lot of questions in her heart. Why would Shi Yongqian go through so much trouble to come to the lower space zone and attack her family? Also, it was quite a scheme of them to blame the Panga clan for everything. Jing Ti, the patriarch of the Panga clan, must have been investigating her since she killed his daughter Jing Minyao. What about Shi Yongqian? She had many conflicts with Xiao Mu, but it had never resulted in anyone's life. So how did Xiao Mu also coincidentally set her sights on her Xiao Mu family? Could it really be a coincidence? When the two of them passed through the drooping flower gate, Arbor paused slightly and stared deeply at the side of the garden. 4 men were tied to the edge of the pool. Whips were whipping their bodies. Arbor looked away. Them? Emolian nodded. Then, she called someone over and whispered a few words to them before letting them leave. It was a good court, but now it's a bloody mess. Get someone to drag them out of the palace and beat them. The order he gave was to whip them for 7 days and nights, then execute them by cutting them. Sir Jojo blinked. She suddenly felt that she had been too soft-hearted. Those people who had caused trouble in her home should have been handed over to her husband to be punished. They should have been reduced to ashes by now. It was hard to appease her anger. Chapter 3462. Elder Wu and the other 3 had long had their cultivations crippled by Prince Mo's order. Now they were no different from cripples. Even if they were dragged out of the royal palace to be whipped, they were simply powerless to resist. Soon, a large crowd of commoners gathered around the bustling royal palace's entrance to watch the show. Seeing those bastards who forcibly entered the Emo Kingdom capital to commit violence being punished by His Highness the Crown Prince, there wasn't a single person who didn't clap and cheer. Upon hearing that the Crown Prince had returned from the Divine Province with the Crown Princess, they were all unable to contain their joy and automatically knelt in the direction of the royal palace, calling out, His Highness the Crown Prince. During this period of time, they had had enough of these bandits' attitude. Seeing them receive such punishment, they naturally vented their pent-up frustrations. When Arbor and Emolian hurried to the Empress Dowager's longevity palace, Gong Chang, and had already been waiting for a long time. At this moment, he hastily ran over and led the 2 people into the Empress Dowager's bedchamber. The elderly woman was currently leaning against the gold-threaded cedar bed. When her gaze landed on the pair of children who had just entered, her eyes clearly brightened. Grandmother. When Arbor saw that the elderly woman's complexion was pale and unwell, her heart involuntarily tightened. Quick, quick, come over and let grandmother take a look at you. On the contrary, the elderly woman was very cheerful and didn't appear to be injured at all. Instead, she laughed heartily. If it weren't for Empress Zhao hastily holding her down, the elderly woman might have lifted the blankets and gotten off the bed to welcome them. Greetings to Royal Father, Royal Mother. Arbor curtsied. The old great king hastily said, Don't be so courteous. Your grandmother's arm has suffered a very serious injury. Crown Princess, quickly come over and carefully examine her. Arbor nodded and quickly walked up to sit by the bed. Empress Zhao stood up and stood to the side, gazing at the elderly woman with deep worry. Arbor carefully examined the Empress Dowager's arm bone. Her brows slightly creased. The Empress Dowager's hand injury was actually more serious than Little Sixth's. Moreover, she was already old, so it was better not to use some overly strong medicines. The Great King and Empress Zhao saw that she was silent after the examination, so they asked worriedly, Is it untreatable? Yes. Arbor nodded. Then he took out his needle bag and helped the old lady lie down. But grandmother has to listen to me. She has to follow my instructions in her daily life. She has to abstain from certain foods and can't be too greedy. She had just taken her pulse and found that the old lady's arm was not the only injury. Her body also needed to be nursed back to health. When the old lady heard this, she immediately muttered unhappily, I didn't eat too much. I only take 1 or 2 bites every time. Empress Zhao couldn't help but hold her forehead as she exchanged glances with the old Great King. The Empress Dowager's personal old mama, Fenggu, smiled and said, Crown Princess, you really have to talk to the Empress Dowager this time. Don't tell on me, Empress Dowager Meng muttered. Suddenly, she felt a slight tingling in her arm. She looked down and saw that the little fellow had already taken out the silver needles from her arm. Apart from the slight tingling just now, he didn't feel anything wrong with it. Empress Dowager Meng said with a smile, Jojo, your healing skills are getting better and better. I didn't feel anything when you healed me. Arbor pursed his lips. He took out a pill and stuffed it directly into the Empress Dowager's mouth. Grandmother, don't be greedy for sweets anymore. I gave you a prescription. You can drink it once a day for half a month. I guarantee that you will be full of energy in the future. Chapter 3463. You won't feel thirsty anymore. How did you know? Empress Dowager Meng was halfway through her sentence when she seemed to have thought of something. She quickly shut her mouth and smiled awkwardly at Empress Zhao. Empress Zhao was angry and amused at the same time. This old lady was like an old urchin. She always lied and hid things from them. She was sick and didn't like to take medicine. What can happen to me? I'm not bragging, but I have the strength to go up the mountain and fight a tiger. Prince Emo rolled his eyes in annoyance. He stepped forward and gently pressed the restless old lady onto the bed. Grandmother, just listen to Jojo. Rest well for a while. Follow Jojo's prescription and nurse your body back to health. The old lady showed a bitter expression, as if she was heroically sacrificing herself. She reluctantly nodded her head. Making her drink that bitter medicinal soup every day was really going to kill her. After Qiao Mu finished bandaging her arm, she gently tucked her in before earnestly saying, Grandmother, be good and recuperate. Later, I'll make 2 bottles of jelly beans for you to eat one every day. I guarantee you'll like it. Emolien was speechless. Jojo looked like he was coaxing a child. It was really annoying. The old lady's eyes lit up when she heard that there were candies that tasted good. Don't worry, I'm a person with self-control. If you ask me to follow the prescription, I'll definitely follow the doctor's instructions. Fenggu pursed her lips. She didn't expose her Empress Dowager. Arbor nodded. That's good. Grandmother, rest well. Hey Jojo, you just came back and you're leaving again. We'll stay here for the next 2 days. Don't worry, we'll talk again when you're better. The Empress Dowager was relieved. She nodded and said, Okay. Queen Zhao was a bit baffled. She glanced at the Empress Dowager before looking at Lady Qiao Qiao. She thought to herself, the young Crown Prince Consort said that she wanted to chat with her mother-in-law. I really don't know how she's going to continue chatting awkwardly with someone who stops talking after 3 sentences. Arbor looked at Empress Zhao. Then he stood up expressionlessly. Father, mother, let's go out first. The old Great King saw that the Empress Dowager was fine. He nodded and hurriedly followed his son out of the Empress Dowager's bedroom. Son, what's going on? It's a long story. Let's go to the study. The old king nodded upon hearing this, and turned to the study with Emolien. Along the way, he asked worriedly, Will these people come again in the future? Don't come again. Just one visit had almost cost him his life. What if those people from the Divine Prefecture could come to their small galaxy as they pleased? Wouldn't that be they would be unlucky once every 2 to 3 days? Emolienne looked at the mess in the garden. Her face darkened. She shook her head and said, "It won't happen again. Father, don't worry." The old great king always knew that his son was very reliable. As long as it was something he said, the old king would believe it 1,000 times over. The father and son went to the study to discuss the matter. Arbor accompanied Empress Zhao to the garden and sat down. "Mother, let me see the bruise on your hand." Empress Zhao was stunned. She smiled and held out her hand. "Mother is fine." Arbor lifted her sleeve. As he applied medicine for her, he said in a low voice, "This happened because of me. I've implicated you." Chapter 3464. When Empress Zhao heard this, she involuntarily knitted her brows and said, "What silly things are you saying? Since we are a family, we naturally share blessings and misfortunes. What's there to implicate?" Arbor looked up at her and nodded. "Don't worry, this kind of thing will never happen again." Empress Zhao smiled at her and nodded. "Mother personally believes in you too." The two of them chatted for a while more. Seeing that the queen wasn't in good spirits, Arbor had someone send her back to the palace to rest. That night, Arbor drew several thousand different jade talismans on Fish Orchid Planet. Currently, most of the talismans she drew were purple talismans, so their effects naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the yellow and blue talismans from before. When the sky was about to brighten, Arbor followed Emolienne to the gate tower on the outskirts of the Emo Kingdom capital. Looking up at the chilly starry sky, Arbor turned to meet Emolienne's eyes. "You can start now, Jojo." Emolienne nodded at her. Arbor then waved her hand, and several thousand jade talismans floated up around her. As if a whirlwind was blowing, they started spinning rapidly. Arbor looked at the wondrous scene in front of her, without a change in expression. She extended her small hands, and slowly fiddled with the jade talisman arrays. 10 sets of triple defense, confinement, and annihilation talisman arrays swiftly took shape in her hands. Even though Emolienne was experienced and knowledgeable, she couldn't help but sigh softly. His Jojo could actually create so many purple talismans in a single night on Fish Orchid Planet, where the flow of time was 12 times faster. It was simply breathtaking to construct such a powerful attack, defense, and annihilation array. Dao Wuji, who was also watching the show from the gate tower until his eyeballs almost fell out, also couldn't help clicking his tongue in wonder. The little stoic is amazing as expected. It's not like no one in this world knows how to draw defense and confinement talisman arrays. But every talisman array she draws is basically a purple talisman. Its talisman power is definitely much higher than that of ordinary defense and confinement talisman arrays. Moreover, I don't know where this little girl got her experience in drawing talismans. I've never seen such a talisman array that superimposed defensive, confining, and killing effects together. It was rare for Ji Chun to finish listening to Dao Wuji's rambling, and a trace of pride appeared on her face. "That's right, this is my family's Jojo. That talisman crafting cultivation is absolutely beyond your imagination." "Humph." Dao Wuji couldn't help but snort. "What do you mean by yours? Spouting nonsense all the time." When the sky was about to brighten, some of the citizens of the Emo Kingdom capital, who were still in a daze, were awakened by the loud noises on the streets. Everyone put on their clothes, washed their faces, and went out of the door or looked out of the window. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. An astrolabe the size of a millstone appeared in the sky above the Emo Kingdom capital, enveloping the 4 cardinal directions of north, south, east, and west. Currently, the sky was covered by this astrolabe. Jade talismans emitting lustrous purple light could be seen circulating and swaying on the astrolabe, bobbing up and down. Everyone ran out of their rooms in a clamor and looked up at the sky, conversing with each other in bewilderment. "What is this, mother?" the children asked, blinking their eyes in bewilderment. "I don't know whose handiwork it is to actually assemble countless talisman arrays into this." An elderly man who knew a little about talisman arts looked up at the sky in excitement. He muttered to himself for a while, but he actually couldn't find the right words to describe this large-scale talisman array in front of him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.